Good afternoon, everyone.
You had to stand in a long line.
I would like to
Council people.
call our afternoon's meeting to order, the Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting for Monday, April 9th, 2012. And as is customary at this time, as chairman, I must seek all board members' disclosure of ownership or control of interest directly or indirectly regarding property within the CRA.
I am currently a resident of the CRA.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I currently own property in that area.
All right. Councilman Townsend, Councilwoman Pratt, and myself, I also own property within the CRA. All right. We are going to follow the agenda at this time, and I am asking for the Mayor's Urban Redevelopment Advisory Committee Chairperson, Mr. Brian Hooper, to join us. We will not sing happy birthday to you today. I haven't in my research seen where that is protocol, but certainly we wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, today. And also, congratulations. I believe this is day 3 that our chairman is now a proud new father.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That definitely deserves applause. So, thank you for attending today, and proceed.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate this opportunity, Chairman, to speak with you and the other distinguished council members and just give you a very brief update on where the Mayor's Urban Redevelopment Advisory Committee is in its process and answer any questions you may have. I've had the opportunity to meet with many of you, and I will be planning on meeting with the rest of you. We have some scheduling issues, but I look forward to speaking with you about this further. Really, I saw this from the beginning as a 3-part process. The first part of our process was for the committee to sort of get up to speed on all of the very good work and important work that has already been done. The CRA plan, the other plans. We have studied and looked at various reports going back decades. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm still trying to get my hands on a couple of them. For example, the Action 76 report. It's not as easy to get as you might think. And apparently there was a waterfront redevelopment task force report that was done in the 60s by the Chamber of Commerce. I haven't been able to find that yet, but I'm working on it. And all of these items are linked to on our website. And so you can go to the URAC website, and what we see is there available for the public. So that's sort of the first part of the process, is getting up to speed. Our first 3 meetings were basically an information dump, where we just had presentations by stakeholders and various neighborhood associations, city entities, things like that. Now what we're trying to do is phase 2, which is prioritize and identify, first of all identify, and second of all prioritize all of the sort of key issues that are facing downtown. What are really the most important things that we can do to implement the CRA plan and to implement the other plans? That's where we are right now. I wasn't at our last meeting because of the baby, but from what I've heard, it was a very productive discussion. And so I'm hoping that the next few meetings will be like that, and then we will be able to, as a committee, discuss the key issues and figure out where we want to focus our efforts. The third phase, sort of to wrap this up, is we want to produce for all of you and for the mayor actionable, concrete action items, just concrete steps that are cost effective in the form of recommendations that will help the mayor, help all of you community leaders, and just sort of provide to you a fresh perspective on what might be one way to approach some of these issues. So that's sort of where we are in the process. I'm very, very optimistic about it. It's been a very, very exciting opportunity for all of us. I speak for all of the committee when I say that we appreciate the degree of generosity each of you has given towards us, meeting with us, talking with us. We appreciate that very, very much. We're trying to get as much input as possible from the community and also from our community leaders, all of you. So thank you very much for working with us and making our job a lot easier. That's pretty much it. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, if you need some help regarding Action 76, I was a young baby, but I served on that committee.
I appreciate that.
Okay, on Action 76. and
I appreciate
might
that.
get curious. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
Yes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Myers.
I just want to thank you very much for taking the opportunity, or giving me the opportunity to meet with you and walk around the town in the hot sun in the middle of the day. It was a really good experience, and I just want to thank you for your commitment to the difficult task before you and the rest of the committee members. And I'm looking forward to working with you and the committee.
I very much appreciated your time, and I also admire your passion for those issues that are important to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
Chairman.
Gerald.
Mr. Hooper.
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, as you move forward with the CRA plan, will you also have the responsibility of seeking funding to back up the plans that you may come up with?
Sir, I'm operating on the assumption that we have no money. And so, as I see it, any recommendation we make has to be rooted in reality. And the economic reality is there's no money. The economy is doing very poorly. Things are changing, and even here in Pensacola, things are turning around. But as far as I'm concerned, we're going to have to look to the private industry, private individuals, to fund a lot of this. Now, there are certainly policies that will facilitate that, none of which I've identified yet. But, in terms of the money, there's just, I think we're all on the same page that there's just
And
not a
that's
lot
where I
there.
was going, to help get partners and investors willing to support
Absolutely,
the
I
plan
completely agree with
in
you,
order
sir.
to move it forward. Okay,
sir.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments, questions? Then I will offer, go, Councilman Wu.
I also want to jump in and thank you very much, Mr. Hooper, for your time.
Thank you, sir.
As you know, you're in one of those positions where your salary gets doubled every year, so if we extend your contract, it'll be twice the amount next year. But in all seriousness, it's a very important job, and you and your committee are to be commended for the time that y'all put into it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
I would like to offer this suggestion, and it really is related to Councilman Gerald's question or inquiry about where is the funding coming from. And as you pointed out, you recognize the baseline right now is zero. I think it would be very instructive, and this may already be on your agenda, Brian, but as you compile these plans and you begin to better understand, you and your committee understands basically the master plan that many of us have envisioned. Citizens have participated for decades in workshops, et cetera. So I know that you all will not disregard those. But it would be instructive, I think, to talk to those individuals in the private sector and ask them what has been the barrier that has prevented them participating, spearheading, partnering with others in a way that would provide for the delivery of some of those. I hope that what your committee will provide is enlightening information about if there are those, what those barriers are, and what we as a CRA, as a governmental body, could possibly do to help remove those barriers and tap into the private sector's funding.
I'm in complete agreement, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Head back for a birthday celebration and
Change the numbers.
and daddy duties.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have another guest who was kind enough to let Brian bump in front there due to again, scheduling priorities. So today, I'm looking forward to receiving the presentation from Mr. Matt Altier,
Yes.
Who is the Vice President of Administrative Services at the University of West Florida. I have been reading about our guest speaker, and I've also heard from others about this exciting idea, the concept of cultural heritage tourism, creating a new economy for Pensacola. And this time, I don't see any sort of time allotment, but if you get too long-winded, I'm certain you can read facial expressions.
And hand gestures.
You're right. Welcome here. Please proceed.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you all very much. I'm delighted to be here. A little bit of background before I get into the presentation. Again, my name is Matt Altier. I am the Vice President for Administrative Services for the University of West Florida. I have not been here long. I started about 10 months ago. I came here from New Jersey, where I was the Vice President for a major university. And before that, I was in California, again working in a university. I started out in higher education in Miami, and I lived in St. Augustine for a few years. I did live in Spain for many years. Some of it was Air Force time, and some of it was as a contractor. But when I started at the university, the president, Judy Bentz, asked me to redevelop the campus and to try and get as much as we could out of what we had at the university. So that's what I was doing. And you probably have heard about some of our projects, including a hotel conference center, a new football stadium, some academic buildings and residential housing, and a whole lot of neat things that we're putting together at the university. 2 months ago, Judy asked me to take over what is known as WFPE, West Florida Historic Preservation, Inc. These are 28 properties owned by the university downtown. Most of you know them. Old Christ Church, the Wentworth Museum, the Museum of Commerce, the entire village of the cottages and the houses near and behind Old Christ Church. Absolutely wonderful assets. The president asked me to do something with them. So as I started researching what we could do with the assets, I went back to some of my background, my roots. Again, I grew up in central Pennsylvania on a farm right beside Gettysburg, and I was fascinated by the number of tourists that went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania every single year. Having lived in St. Augustine, I was fascinated by the number of tourists that went to St. Augustine. As I researched this, I found out that it is a totally different tourist than anything we're used to in Pensacola. Pensacola does an absolutely fabulous job in marketing our beach assets, and we do have beautiful beaches, and we get a lot of tourists for our beaches, and that is perfect, and that is wonderful. And last year, I think we did about 3.5 million in tourism for the beaches. What we don't do well is we don't get the cultural heritage tourist, and I'll show you how I know that. And I'll show you some ideas of what we can to do that and the difference it can make. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Hold on. I think the university with Pensacola and the community, and it's going to be a team effort, can provide a massive new economy for this region. And we can do it by way of the cleanest form of economic development. Everybody knows about economic development with bringing in potential jobs with outside companies, but we have some assets that we can utilize, and I think we can do something like this. We can get to a point of where we're bringing an extra $1 billion to the annual Pensacola economy, and we create 10,000 jobs. And believe it or not, we can do this in the next few years. We do it by creating a brand new destination for that group of people called the Cultural Heritage Tourist. That tourism group, Cultural Heritage Tourism, is the fastest growing segment of tourism today. It is astounding at how big this group of tourists are. By all counts, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 times the size of the tourist group that go to the beaches. So again, we do a wonderful job getting the beach tourist. This group is even bigger. This is why. The United States is undergoing profound demographic change. There are 79 million baby boomers retiring over the next 10 years. The Cultural Heritage Tourist is an older tourist, and the baby boomers feed this tourist group. Out of the 118 million adult travelers in the United States today, 78% of that group participate in cultural heritage activities. That goes back to that big demographic I just described that exists. This is what they look like, and these are some big differences as far as this group goes. They are slightly older. They're around 50 years old, 1/3 are over 55, and that's growing. And that's growing by 10,000 people a day. This group is likely to travel outside their region. In other words, they fly. They don't, they don't drive. And again, that's a big difference to the tourists that we're used to right now. They have higher incomes. They spend more per trip. On average, this group of tourists spends about $995 per person per trip. And that's how I came up with the $1 billion for an injection into our economy. I'm talking about just going after 1 million of this group of tourists, and we've just added $1 billion to our economy. A higher percentage are college educated, and here's another key factor at this group. They travel year-round. They're not seasonal. That's one of the reasons St. Augustine has a lot of tourists. This is what they do. They seek destinations where they can experience historic character. That's very important. They want an educational experience when they travel. They spend more on the cultural heritage activities. The fourth one down is very important. They do pay more for lodging, but lodging that reflects the cultural heritage of the destination. In other words, this is a group that likes bed and breakfast and boutique hotels. We don't have a lot of those downtown yet. And I found this interesting. They're dedicated shoppers at museum stores. They spend a lot of money at museums. What do they do when they get someplace? Well, they spend 33% of their time visiting historical places and museums and things like forts. We have forts, we have history, we have historic buildings, we have museums. We have everything that this tourist looks for. Here's another big wedge. 21% of their time is spent shopping. Again, they have a lot of disposable income and they use it. And then you can see the other wedges. And yes, they do go to the beach. 7% of the time when they visit someplace is visiting a beach, which means there will be cross-pollination between our beach tourist and this group of tourists, which is wonderful. Let them go back and forth. This group of tourists does a number of things for a community, and you can see them all. Besides educating the residents and the tourists about our history and tradition, it helps protect our historic and cultural resources. But I think more importantly than anything is the top left one. By going after this new market, we can promote economic and civic vitality and growth, brand new revenue stream, and a brand new tax base for a community. If we can get 1 million of these tourists spending $1 billion a year, we've just created a new tax base of between $30 and $40 million for Pensacola. So how many of these folks actually visit small towns? That was one of my first questions. I know it's a big group based on my research, but I wanted to see. Again, having lived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, I look at that first. It's a small town, only 7,000 residents, but 3 million of these tourists visit Little Gettysburg every single year. 4 million of these tourists visit Charleston, South Carolina, every year. Closer to home, 6.2 million of this group of people visit St. Augustine every single year. And again, one of the reasons St. Augustine has a higher number than Gettysburg is because these folks don't travel during just any one season. They travel during the middle of the winter. But it's much nicer to visit the South, like St. Augustine or Pensacola, in the middle of winter than it is Gettysburg when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, and I know. We can deliver a new destination for this very different kind of tourist. There's a few things that we need to do, though. We need to revitalize our existing historic district. We're going to need to enhance the downtown with new development, but new development that is specifically designed for this brand new demographic. We need to connect the town. We have a lot of sections of town that include the Palafox, Main Street, and of course I'm singing to the choir, especially with Brian. I know he knows all this. The port, we have the historic village, we have the old cemetery. You know, there are other parts within Pensacola that need to be connected that have history. I think it's Belmont de Villas area is another neighborhood that we could include. Bottom line is we're disconnected. And you will see that the historic towns that are not disconnected, that make it easy to walk from one section to the other, do very well with this group of tourists. We would need to create a brand new marketing campaign centered around our history. We have the history. We have the 5 flags of Pensacola. We have something that no other town or city can brag about, and that is our history. There are a lot of beach towns up and down the Gulf Coast, and we're one of them. But I can tell you right now, there's Panama City and Destin and a lot of the other beach towns that compete for us with our beach tourists. They don't have the history. They don't have the historic destinations. They don't have the forts. They don't have half of what we have in attracting this new demographic. What we don't want to do, though, is create a monster marketing campaign to the world, bragging about our history and getting people here when we don't have the accommodations yet. We don't have the connectivity of the downtown or the infrastructure. Because the worst thing we can do is get a whole bunch of people coming here and they have a bad time. Remember, this is a group of people that will come here for a totally different visit than the group that we're currently getting. And if they have a bad time, they'll badmouth us and they'll go home and they won't come back again. If we do this right and we do what we need to do first and then attract this group through a marketing campaign and they have a good time, they will come back. On average, this group of tourists revisit a place 15 times over their lifetime. And I'm going to use Gettysburg as another example because, again, I live there. They'll visit once, and it's a short period of time. This group of tourists, their visits are shorter than the beach tourists. They only come for between 2 to 5 days. They stay in the B&Bs. They eat in the restaurants every single night, but they don't get to see everything the first time, so they want to come back. And they'll come back. And then if they have a good time the 3rd, 4th time, then they'll bring their grandkids back and their nieces and nephews. So they will keep coming back, but they have to have a good experience. One of the reasons I know we're not attracting this group of tourists right now is very simple. I went into the web pages that this group of tourists, the cultural heritage tourists, the websites that they currently use to plan their next vacation. Here's a big one. This is from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and that's the name of it, Places That Matter. Look at the bottom. Look at where Pensacola should be located. We're not on it. St. Augustine is, Charleston is, Gettysburg, Virginia, New Orleans. There are a lot of historic destinations that have partnerships with the Historic Trust, that have historic hotels, and they get them on there. We're not on it. So the very websites that this group looks at to plan their next vacation, we're not even on the map yet. Here's another list. This is right off the webpage of floridatravel.com. Florida's top 10 most walkable cities. Look who's at the top, St. Augustine. And some of these you would think aren't walkable, but they have downtowns that are connected. But again, Pensacola's not on it. Florida's small towns with big surprises. Pensacola's not on it. Here's a model, having lived in Spain, that I thought we could utilize, or a version of this model, in order to get this going. There are hotels in Spain, they're called the Paradors of Spain. The government of Spain decided a long time ago to help create economic growth in small villages. They would utilize their historic treasures, their old buildings, buy them, renovate them, turn them into nice hotels, and then market it to the world. And they're called Paradors, and they've done very well. And once the Paradors are successful and they have a good clientele and they're on the map, then the government sells them to the private sector. But it's a way to jumpstart an economy when there aren't private dollars, or the private sector can't take the risk in starting something like this. This is hard to read, so I'm going to go down the list for you. But these are the things that I think we would need to do in order to put together this new tourism package for Pensacola. We would need to install new monuments and statues and plaques and places of interest all over downtown, just like the towns that I described, the Savannahs, the Charlestons, New Orleans, Gettysburg, San Luis Obispo in California, any village you go to in Europe. We need more monuments, and as corny as it might sound, maybe some large monuments, like an Andrew Jackson sitting on a horse with his sword drawn in Ferdinand Plaza, but the kinds of things that draw interest and people can read about, along with plaques and other interesting things downtown. We need to enhance the downtown and make it look more like it did 100 or 200 years ago, and that means tearing up the asphalt and putting in some cobblestone streets, or in our case, brick pavers. Judy Bentz, who, as you all know, is an archaeologist, pointed out to me very quickly that we didn't have cobblestone. We had brick pavers, but that kind of a look. We need to create more downtown sidewalks and pedestrian crossings that make it more friendly. Almost create, if you will, a history path. Something like the Freedom Trail in Boston, Massachusetts, where it's easy to cross the town or the city with very historical interest and places and things to read about, and it's all marked. It's very easily marked, and you can do it. And fill in some of the empty parking lots we have with some historic kinds of facilities. We do need to build the accommodations, 10 new bed and breakfasts and 3 to 5 boutique hotels in downtown. That would add about 300 rooms to our current inventory downtown, but it's the kind of rooms that this group of tourists look for. Again, we don't want to invite these folks here without having the accommodations, or they'll turn around and go home and they won't like it. There's a way I think we can do this using the Parador model, and I'll describe that to you in a few minutes. 300 new rooms will not get us the kind of inventory we need for the first 1 million tourists, but with the existing inventory of existing rooms downtown on the private sector, it'll get us enough to get up to about 250,000 to 300,000 tourists. And I think that's a lot for the first year. We can get up to 1 million tourists in 2 or 3 years if we do this right. Once the people are here, the economy pumps up, the private sector will jump all over this. They need numbers in order to make a new project work, in order to get financing. It's a chicken and the egg problem is what we have. For the private sector to come here and build boutique hotels and open up bed and breakfast, they need the numbers. They need the tourists that will stay there. Until those numbers are here, they can't get the financing. It's a high risk. But we don't want the people here first if we don't have the accommodations, because, like I said, they'll leave with a bad experience. We need to make improvements to the Colonial Archaeological Trail, and that means adding some reconstructions all over downtown. The university has just an absolute wealth of experience and talent in the archaeology departments and the history departments. We have a lot of digs downtown. Right now, the digs are typical open holes with some foundations of what used to be like the forts, the original Spanish fort that sat here. But there's nothing beside it. We need to recreate the corners of the forts that used to sit there so people see what it was. Right now, those holes in the ground are used more for trash bins than anything else, and it's a shame. So we have a lot of the assets that I'm talking about, but we need to finish them. We need to give these people things to do for 5 days. We need to create the ferry system, and I've heard a lot of talk about this, and I think there is funding for creating some sort of an infrastructure for a ferry at Fort Pickens, which is wonderful. But we need to finish it. We need to create a ferry docking system downtown, the infrastructure for that, hopping over with a water taxi to the new Maritime Park. Fort Pickens, finish that dock. Put one out at Fort Barrancas, which would connect the Navy Air Museum and the lighthouse, and then of course one at Pensacola Beach, so we can have that cross-pollination of the different groups of tourists that will be here. We will need to create a downtown trolley system. A lot of what I've described to you is very walkable, but I think there are a lot of outside historical places from the exact downtown that people will like to see, that we might have to take them on a trolley. And remember, this demographic is an older demographic and aging, so we do need to make sure that the downtown that we provide is accessible. In doing everything I just described, highlighted in blue are all of the properties that the university currently owns. Including the Wentworth Museum, including Old Christ Church, and the houses that are along the road. The big building is the Museum of Commerce. We have the Museum of Industry. So there's a lot of properties we already own, and I can get started using the university with a couple of homes for, let's say, like 2 B&Bs. But what I show on here in red are the potential of other sites, other bed and breakfasts, other boutique hotels that could be developed around town. I've broken it into a couple of different site zones. And of course, this is just my initial shot at this. This can change dramatically, and there are people who will have much better ideas, which is wonderful. Oh, first let me go back to the main site. Follow the yellow brick road. Everything that you see in gold represents turning those roads from asphalt into the brick pavers that I described. Pulling people from Garden Street down into the historic district and Palafox, and then creating that historic look again with the streets. The city owns the plazas, Ferdinand Plaza and the Seville Plaza. I would suggest that the city get the idea of potentially leasing some of the land in the plaza to some of the restaurants. I put this right across the street from Jackson's so people can get an idea. If you can imagine a viable restaurant on one side with outdoor cafe seating under the big oak trees on pavers with the nice wrought iron furniture, and just having a couple of those in our plazas across the street from boutique hotels and other restaurants that would open, it would just create a very lively downtown. It would get people onto our plazas, eating and dining, and you know, it's the kind of thing that you see in every single town in Europe, and you'll see it in these historic towns that I described. We can do that on both our plazas, and I can do it with the plazas that the university owns. I'm just going to go through these quickly. These are just examples of boutique hotels from other towns, other cities. This one's from Seville, Spain. We own the Beacon building, which could be converted to a bed and breakfast or even a restaurant. The front door of that opens right up to the Seville Quarter. Wentworth Museum, I originally put this in here thinking that on the back of the Wentworth we could actually build a boutique hotel. Keep it as a beautiful museum, but the lobby could become the walkthrough and the lobby of a boutique hotel that's built behind it. But since I had this idea, I've heard even a better one. And so there are a lot of good ideas out there, but we have the historic buildings. I want to give you some other examples of how I know we're not attracting this demographic before I show you more. The university, with our historic properties, keeps records of how many people go through them. We sell tickets to not only the historic village, but to the museums like the Wentworth. And we organize field trips. Last year, with all of our historic buildings in our village and the museums, we only had 67,000 people go through them, and 40,000 of those 67,000 were school children on field trips. That means we've got almost nobody going through the historic properties that we currently own. which is obviously not a good thing, but when you look at in the context of doing what I'm describing here, there's a monster market within the United States that we can tap that we're not tapping right now. Here's an example of just outside seating and a plaza, and that's the kinds of things that we could do at Ferdinand Plaza and the Seville Plaza. Bed and breakfast, a lot of these are right from Charleston, South Carolina. A lot of these historic towns have bed and breakfasts and boutiques all over the place. It's another one from Charleston. Another one from Charleston. There's one from Savannah. Gettysburg, I think, has about 35 or 40 bed and breakfasts and about 10 boutique hotels downtown. St. Augustine, same number. Charleston has more than anybody. But there's a reason, and I described it to you. That's another one from Charleston. That's an example of a boutique hotel, 3-story. And we can build them from scratch and make them look like they're part of the historic town. Streetscapes. This, again, just examples. Statues, more statues, pavers for sidewalks, connecting the town, creating a freedom trail or a historic sidewalk path, if you will, with other kinds of enhancements and amenities down there. Savannah, Georgia, beautiful plaza, again with a lot of pavers. And incidentally, along these pavers, they had them cleared out. They do put outside seating. There is a restaurant that sets up right under that oak tree. Here's an example of cobblestone streets in Charleston. Again, we wouldn't go with the cobblestone. We'd go with something more authentic, but the same kind of look. Another one, Charleston. Charleston. I threw this one in here because it's brand new. It's Eagle, Colorado, but I just wanted to give an example of what you can do just using new construction to make something look like it's historic. Charleston, we would need to do this. More cannon, more artifacts. The university under the West Florida Historic Preservation, Inc. has a lot. We have 150 cannonballs sitting in our basement. And we could utilize those and make sure that they get the little spot welds and put them in pyramids outside so people don't steal them. We've got big anchors. We've displayed one over by the fish house, but we've got some others that we could bring out. Donations, I think if we could start a project like this, would come in from private sector, and we could get the artifacts. Let me tell you something exciting that I learned, because I thought of this because I have the picture of the cannon up there. I was in a dinner sponsored by the Historic Preservation, Inc. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the guest speaker was a major historian from Alabama, but he started his career at Fort Pickens, downtown. He's worked in many of the museums and the forts that we have, and now he's in Alabama. He told us that he did research and found actual authentic records that proves that we have at Fort Barrancas the cannon that fired the very first shot that started the Civil War. To me, that is just absolutely amazing. Again, having lived near Gettysburg, I know how fanatic the Civil War historian tourist group is. They travel all over the country looking for different kinds of historic locations that have anything to do with the Civil War. Nobody knows that we have the first cannon that started the whole thing. If they did, that cannon alone would draw 1 million of these folks, I think. Again, Charleston. Here's just a quick kind of map of where a ferry system could go. Going to Fort Pickens, going to Fort Barrancas and the lighthouse and the Naval Aviation Museum, going out to Pensacola Beach on the back where all the restaurants are, going over to the Maritime Park. That would be an exciting piece to add if we go after this new demographic of tourists, because it gives them the not only the added value of a nice water trip, but we land at some very historic destinations that I think would be fascinating for them. They're fascinating as it is right now, but for this group, even more so. Now, let me describe to you the Parador model and how I think we can put this together here. The university owns a lot of the properties, as I said. We have a very active and growing academic program called hospitality management. We also have a very active archaeological department and a historic department. All are majors at the university with a lot of students. We also have a very large and growing business, College of Business, with a lot of students. The hospitality management group of students need training, real-world training. What I'm going to suggest is that the university put this entire project together in one fell swoop, so we do not have to wait the amount of time it normally takes for a town like Charleston to go through the renaissance of becoming a historic destination. Charleston took about 12 years to become a historic destination for the cultural heritage tourist. Savannah took about 20 years. They started in 1979, and they didn't get to the point of where they could capture this group of tourists until just about a decade ago. We have the assets. We can jumpstart this thing with one project. University could build or renovate with existing properties the 10 bed and breakfast and 3 boutique hotels. We could manage them with our hospitality management program, hiring a private management firm to make sure that we do the business right, but having students working in B&Bs and in boutique hotels downtown. But we could also give that kind of environment to our archaeology students, our history students, and our business majors. The university would operate all of the facilities in the historic village, the museums, the B&Bs. I would lease as much possible space as I could to restaurants in the private sector, because I don't think we would need to do that on the restaurant side. I think we have enough private capital, enough companies that could open restaurants, and they would open fairly quickly. Under the Parador model, which is the one we would copy, the university would not compete with the private sector in filling the rooms. We would ensure that all of the private existing inventory is filled first, and then we would take the overage. What that does is it pumps up the private sector downtown to a year-round tourist group and keeps them full. But with the added 300 rooms, we've created an inventory so that we can start marketing ourselves to the world. And once these B&Bs and boutiques have been running for a couple of years to where they have the good numbers that are necessary for the private sector to invest, we then sell them and make sure the private sector does a good job. I would keep maybe 2 B&Bs and 1 boutique under the university, under the same context though, non-compete, so that we have training grounds for our growing hospitality management program. That does a number of things. Like I said, it kickstarts this entire project so that we don't have to wait a couple of decades. I think we've got the assets. We're 80% there. Pensacola has been working, I think, to almost this point for 450 years. We just need to finish it. For the university, that would create not only another revenue stream to help the university, but a very unique learning environment for hospitality students, one in which is not duplicated anywhere in the United States. There are many universities across the country that run hotel conference centers on their university campuses, and they do incorporate their hospitality program into those hotels, but nobody has bed and breakfast and boutiques, which would be a very unique marketing niche for us. So that, in a nutshell, is the presentation. Where would I get the money? This entire project would cost about $50 million. $10 million to do the historic infrastructure, the cobblestone, the statues, the Freedom Trail, everything that we need to do downtown, the trolley system. We'd need another $5 million to finish the ferry infrastructure. That's $15 million. We'd need another $5 million for the initial annual marketing campaign that would have to go together, be put together once we're ready. Again, because remember, we'd have to be doing this nationally. We'd have to go into markets that we've never gone into outside our driving range. We'd be marketing ourselves to the Chicagos and the Philadelphias, New Yorks, Seattles. And I would need about $30 million to create the 300 rooms that we need in the boutiques. There is, under the Restore Act, the BP fine money, which will be distributed over the next year if everything comes together with Congress. Escambia County is due to get a chunk of the Restore Act money, and this is the BP fine money. And what I'm going to ask is if people are in favor of this project, that we take $50 million of that and we put it into creating a billion-dollar economy for Pensacola. Very small investment for that kind of a return. I don't know of any place in the world where you could get a return on investment of that magnitude. If it's the BP fine money, because it's quote-unquote free money, that's how I could do it with a non-compete contract with the private sector. I wouldn't have a mortgage on those facilities. I would make it part of our educational training program, but we create the inventory that is needed to attract this new group of tourists. If I had to bond the project that I just described to you and pay for it, then I couldn't, I would have to compete. I'd have to compete with the private sector because I would have a mortgage to pay, and I'd have that business model. So the best way to do this is to put it together with, I think, the BP fine money and get this thing started. We can be up to 1 million tourists in 3 to 4 years if we put this together. So I thank you, and I'm open to any suggestions or questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open this post-presentation portion up to any comments or questions by CRA members. Yes, Councilwoman Myers.
Well, I'm just really excited that you were here today. I was going to try and get you on the City Council's agenda. This is the third time I've heard this presentation, and every time I hear this presentation, I get more and more excited about it. It just makes a lot of sense to me. I have been working for 7 years on various projects in the historical tour district, trying to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Of course, the demographics, you're probably talking about the over 55 group. And I just really hope that this is a project that is doable. I think it's one of the most exciting projects that's come to my attention since I've been living in Pensacola. And I've often wondered why we haven't done a better job of marketing our great resource that we have here in the historic district downtown. So I'm just really pleased. Again, I heard this presentation at the Gopher Club last week, and there was probably several hundred people there. And let me tell you, they were very excited. And I'm sure people came up and expressed that excitement to you, and they certainly did to me. So I'm delighted to hear this presentation again, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, will you help refresh my memory if the Restore Act whatever is going on, how much do we think we will get, just so I know how much 50 million is in that context?
Yeah, of course, Congress has to settle on the amount, but it could be anywhere from 5 to 20 billion for all 5 states of the Gulf. And then there's a formula set up within Florida to distribute that to the different counties that were affected. The numbers range anywhere from, I think the least amount that Escambia County could get would be about 100 million, and the most would be about 200 million.
Okay. Also, I was trying to sort of process the numbers you were showing, and you had a handful of million visitors to St. Augustine or Gettysburg in a year, and I guess in my experience, I was not the historic tourist or whatever when I went when I was 12. but both of those cities I visited in one day. And so when you then say that they spend about $1 million per visitor, is that averaged over all of the visitors to Gettysburg, the little dorky people who stay for one day or, go and take one little tour, and the people who stay for 5 days? Or is it that that's sort of the question.
Let me fix your numbers. It's not $1 million per tourist. It's
$1,000 was
it's
per visitor.
900.
Was
The average for the cultural heritage tourist
right.
is $995. Now, of course, that's nationwide. That's a national average. So it could be much less. It can be much more, depending on where they go and what they do. But when you look at in the context of a 5-day trip or a 4-day trip, spending $250 a night on a bed and breakfast, plus all of the restaurants and the shopping that this group does, that's really not a whole lot of money. Because when I first saw the number, I thought it was kind of high until I figured it out, and I said, well, actually, I can see them spending that much money. So it's a national average. The average stay of this group is between 2 and 5 days. So the average of that number is probably like 3.2 days is their average stay. So that means, no, you're right, some will come for 1 day and some will come for a week or 2 weeks. But it averages out to about that.
But the $1,000 per visitor, is that per visitor who visits historic Pensacola?
Per stay, not per day.
Stay.
Per stay, right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councilman Wu.
First, I want to thank you for a fine presentation.
Thank you.
I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia, and I happened to be there last weekend. I hadn't seen brother and sister in about a year, so wife and I had a meeting. It was close by and went. Absolutely remarkable, everything you said about people that come. They're coming, their tour buses, horse-drawn carriages, constantly going throughout the whole city. I don't think there's a time, a night, a day that you don't see people there engaged in looking at all these sites. And everything you said is spot on. I mean, it's a very walkable city. You have monuments out, you have statues. It's exactly the type of thing, as Councilwoman Myers says, that you can get very excited about, because it's a huge influx of money into the community. And yet at the same time, we're talking about a very clean industry, because people come, spend the money, they leave.
Right.
So you don't have any additional infrastructure needs. You don't have to build, any other type of things.
No chimneys with this.
Exactly.
No smokestacks.
And Savannah didn't always have, as you said, they didn't always have this. When I was a child growing up, the waterfront, which, we get literally millions, I think, visiting the waterfront. It was where the derelicts stayed.
Right.
No one would go down there because it wasn't safe. And so, and the Historic Society came around years later, and until that point, there was no emphasis on historic preservation. But the tourism that they have now and SCAD are the two things I believe that are keeping Savannah as prosperous as it is. And
I would agree. Yeah,
So
Savannah.
thank you very
Yeah, you're welcome. So Savannah did. Like I said, they went through the renaissance of getting to this point, but it took them a long time. And Charleston did the same thing. Charleston was not always a walkable city or a tourist attraction for this group. It took them about 12 years to get to where they are today. But like I said, we have all the assets. We just need to finish it, and we can kickstart this thing. We've got a lot of advantages that they didn't have.
Thank you. Yes, Councilwoman DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for being late today. I had to get my chess pieces in the right place, my children. So I just want to thank you for your hard work and your presentation today. I did come in partway through, but a lot of our assets around the area are so separated. I mean, the people that want to travel and come to the Navy Museum also would love to see our downtown, and they're staying at the beach a lot of times. And the key to it, I think, is this ferry service that you spoke of, and we do have a memo of understanding with the National Park Service, and I think they're building their pier right now out at Fort Pickens. The pilings are going in.
Right.
So it's just a matter of the funding. I know that we've tried for a couple times with the Tiger Grant through the port to get the ferry service funding, and I'm sure, private sector would want to participate in that as well. And the bed and breakfast component, a lot of people have taken a try at that with some of the big historic homes in North Hill. So this is thrilling to hear that that's the market that this group of cultural tourists want to, they want to stay in those old houses. So anything we can do to support and advocate and help private sector connect with you as well is wonderful. So I can't wait to hear more about the dollars that'll be available from BP.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll make one final comment. I also want to thank you very much. I have been waiting to hear this presentation, and you exceeded my expectations, not only in the vision that you painted, but also the accuracy of your facts and figures. I've been involved in hotel design and development, and the numbers on a per key basis. I did some back of the napkin calculations. It's good to see that again, those numbers are well grounded in the industry. I appreciate how big the vision is, how grand it is. I particularly appreciate what I think is one of the greatest examples of adaptive reuse. That's a buzzword, but most often on a building by building basis. This is an adaptive reuse on a village basis. This is taking an entire section of our city, and I think tapping into an asset that otherwise has been underutilized. This is my walking neighborhood. This is where I've lived for more than 20 years, and I have lamented the obvious lack of high-density visitation. And while I certainly appreciate the school buses pulling up, and I recall going through my educational process, actually going to the original T.T. Wentworth Museum that felt like we were traveling somewhere up to Virginia. The trip was so long to get there. But I recognize the museums are vitally important in the educational process, but they are woefully underutilized, and as it becomes more and more apparent that funding is becoming scarce, the luxury of having three-dimensional artifacts at the scale of a true building is truly becoming an almost an unaffordable luxury. So again, I think the vision is great. I think you pointed out that we as a city council, as a CRA, and hopefully the members sitting in the capacity as city council members, how important it is going to be for us to focus on our partnership role, our teaming role of looking at the infrastructure that must be addressed to build that tighter web, and the fabric that you described has to be in place if this is going to be a successful model. So once this model is embraced and individuals pull the trigger, we need to recognize that if we are going to be a winning partner, we've got to we have to advance our thinking and allocation of funding so that the infrastructure supports this model and makes the cultural tourist experience absolutely excellent, nothing short of that. Also, I want to point out that while you focused certainly on the UWF-owned properties, we have some other neighborhoods that are outside your purview that have the opportunity to benefit tremendously in this new emphasis on and focus on the multiple cultural venues and history in the city, including the African American history that they have tried and put forth certain projects and programs that certainly merit attention for those visitors. This is a perfect chance to tie all of that together. For instance, the Chappie James home is just one example. But I could ramble on and on. I'm going to end it on this, and that is that just recently I experienced a visit to, just 2 weeks ago, to Jekyll Island. That's an example of a historic property that has cycled through success, not success, condemnation, and now is a thriving hotel destination. At one point, the state of Georgia took over that property. I believe that's an 1888 property in terms of its origin. The state recognized how valuable it was, but they tried to support it as a resort. With the state being the agency, they failed, but there are lessons to be learned from that. What I am hearing is there is an opportunity for a public entity, the public sector, the University of West Florida, to help jumpstart and provide the solid footing that's necessary, and that there is definitely the symbiotic opportunity through student educational advancement, on-the-job training, and then the eventual infusion of perhaps a greater degree of private sector ownership. So it's a great transition. I have seen it work in the hotel conference center context with other colleges. And I just better stop now because we've got more on our agenda. But if you can't tell I'm enthused, then I haven't done a good job responding.
All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you. I'm pulling the agenda back up on my iBooks here. Okay. We now are moving to the action items, approval of our last CRA board meeting minutes of February 6th.
Approval.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. And our remaining action item is payment of invoice to Abramson and Associates. And Ryan, I will invite you to provide some commentary on this next action item.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, CRA Board. Before you, you have a request from Barry Abramson of Abramson and Associates, a real estate consulting firm. Mr. Abramson was engaged from 2008 to 2010 with both the city and the CRA for consulting services related to the redevelopment of the ECUA site and to the Maritime Park. Mr. Abramson's contract with the CRA had a maximum value of $24,500 with no specified end date. There's about $10,000 remaining in his contract amount, and the contract was never canceled. In December of 2011, Mr. Abramson was subpoenaed by the Maritime Park Development Partners in the lawsuit CMPA versus MDPD. It was related specifically to his work with the Maritime Park. And he submitted a written request to us on the 3rd of March for reimbursement of the professional expenses and time that he incurred related to that deposition. And the detail is in your agenda package, but it includes his travel to and from, coordinating with the, at the time, Assistant City Administrator Mr. Kobe and CMPA Attorney Ed Fleming, his review of documents, and his assembling and copying of his email correspondence, which he had to do through his IT firm. So Mr. Abramson is seeking reimbursement in the amount of $2,295, and his detailed invoices are in the memo. The contract between the CRA and Abramson and Associates does not specify a reimbursement responsibility in the event of a subpoena or other legal proceedings. So I open this to the board's discretion. And it's important to note that the CMPA has also received a couple requests similar to Mr. Abramson's, and Ed Fleming, CRA attorney, found that it was not appropriate to compensate from CMPA. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't understand that last statement that the CMPA did what?
Sure. I have an email from Mr. Fleming that says that Mr. Owen Beach, I believe his last name, he's also submitted a similar invoice request to the Community Maritime Park Associates. And Mr. Fleming concluded that factual witnesses cannot be paid for time spent giving deposition testimony pursuant to a subpoena. The only exception to that rule is for expert witnesses giving expert testimony. He says, though both may qualify as experts in their respective fields, they were deposed as fact witnesses only, making it inappropriate for them to be compensated for the time spent giving their testimony. And that is what CMPA attorney Ed Fleming found related to CMPA invoices.
Okay, we're not talking about a whole lot of money, but the only thing I was concerned about when I read the summary was, as you stipulated, that the contract with Mr. Averson was actually for the ECUA negotiations, and I guess I raised the question as why was this invoice sent requesting the city to pay it or CRA to pay it rather than the CMPA, which appeared to be a legitimate bill that they encountered. And maybe I'm reading it wrong or not, and maybe some of the CMPA board members can share that with me.
You see in the letter from Mr. Abramson that since he had formerly worked with Mr. Kobe and with Mr. Cohen, he had made contact with Mr. Kobe back in September when he first received his notice of deposition. And kind of as he worked his way through the process, he eventually made contact with Mr. Reynolds, who forwarded the request to CRA.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can help clarify some
Yep.
of that during the negotiations with MPDP, Scott Davidson's firm, the CMPA retained Owen Beisch as to help in formulating the contract, but the city became very heavily involved in that contract as well, and so the city retained Barry Abramson. And so the original contract was for something else, but they sort of included it, as you know, the contract amount was $24,500, just below the $25,000 cutoff. And so it was sort of a mobile contract, and that's why the city used his services in crafting the agreement. That's why he would then turn to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you.
I'm gonna do something bad and put our attorney on the spot. Is it common in your experience to reimburse factual witnesses? Is this something you would recommend we make as our procedure?
When did you become adverse to putting me on the spot?
I feel guilty every time, but I still do it.
No, this is a difficult issue for y'all to decide. I concur completely with Mr. Fleming. If you're asking me as a pure legal question, is there a duty under the contract to compensate this man? The answer is no. Now, may you compensate him if you choose to do so under a principle of fairness? Sure. But I defer to counsel on that. The pure legal answer is no, you don't have a duty to compensate him.
I guess my question is more, is that a common practice that you do compensate, or is it something that, because I don't even know if the city does it I'm sure we have people like this in our lives that have been subpoenaed.
I would say the common practice would be to adhere to the terms and conditions of the contract.
Yeah. Yes, Councilman Townsend.
Let me ask the attorney another question. If we prevail in the lawsuit, and we start talking about attorney's fees and these kind of things, could that be inclusive as a payout for work done or the expense that was encountered in pursuing the lawsuit?
Yeah, it could be, but understand that the "we" now is neither the city nor the CRA in the lawsuit. It's the CMPA and the developer. So that would depend on how the attorney for the CMPA, Mr. Fleming, chose to look at it and the pursuit of costs. And I think we already know how he looks at it. He believes it's not reimbursable. So, I mean, that's why it's a difficult question. I mean, clearly this man acted under a assumption that he was led to believe by people who are no longer with the city that he was going to be paid. That's a different question, and you get a different answer than does the contract require it. I mean, regardless of what folks lead other folks to believe, when you have a contractual relationship, you're bound by the terms and conditions of the contract.
Yes, Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, okay, if this gentleman was subpoenaed and chose not to go because he said, look, I'm going to have to bill the city of Pensacola for my time, and they're not going to pay me. So I'm not going to come to the subpoena. That's not going to happen. So I agree. Go back to the terms of the contract. If the terms of the contract state that we're going to pay him for any efforts he has during subpoenas, then we owe him money. But if not, I'm agreeing with Mr. Ed Fleming in that we shouldn't pay this bill, and that I won't be supporting paying this bill at this time. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'll offer this question, and I've been attending just about all of the CMPA meetings. My question is, while this has been put in front of Attorney Ed Fleming, and he clearly has stated this is not something that he feels as a factual, basically, witness, that this is not the CMPA's duty. The CMPA, as I recall, has not entertained this discussion at all. So here we are as a CRA, and we're being asked before the CMPA has had this discussion. Yes?
I'm going to ask how we come, this is how the CRA works. We have a recommendation before us, and technically it's from you.
Right.
But when we have recommendations, it means that the staff, the mayor, or someone has supported it. And I just was wondering if this is clearly a staff recommendation. I mean, because this is I could go either way. But if this has been vetted by the CRA administration, I just am curious if that's how we got to have a recommendation.
The recommendation is to consider his request, so.
Right. But my understanding of our agendas historically has been when it says recommendation, that is the staff wants us to vote for it, is how we typically write it as a recommendation. If otherwise, it would be a discussion item. He is requesting it. You guys go do what you want. We're not going to weigh in. Or it would have never come to us if it was not being recommended by the administration. If that makes any sense.
It makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah.
And I'll comment on that in a minute. But Councilman Gerald.
Thank you. Well, actually, a recommendation simply means that they're making a recommendation, and we have the option of voting it up or down. It doesn't mean that they are.
I understand. I just
Yeah.
was wondering, is this the administration's position that they would like us to support that?
Clearly,
I
that's
think
what
that-
it is at this point. It's a recommendation from them that, but in any case, it simply means that we can either vote it up or down. We don't always have to accept the recommendations as they come forward.
I agree.
Just want to sort of clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're about to get educated. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this particular topic, I'd simply say that this is a recommendation for council to consider payment. There is no recommendation here that this be paid.
I can read that, right? Consider the request.
Okay, can I clarify then, is the administration's position that it not be paid? Is that, I mean, I'm just, we do look to you as the
Yeah.
people who have thought these through and understand the
This-
bigger ramifications.
I think the city attorney said it very well. I mean, this is really your call. There isn't a recommendation from staff or from the attorney's office. This is essentially one of those things that truly is a CRA, in this case, decision. We agreed to bring it forward to the organization, but there's arguments for both sides of the issue, and there is no recommendations from staff.
And I'm going to ask you a question you can't answer, but that's okay. Do you know if we traditionally have paid the, like, I'm guessing the contract with him is probably sort of a standard thing that we've done. Have we traditionally paid this, or are we setting an unusual precedent?
Contract did not cover it. I do know that the contract that originally came from Mr. Abramson did have it included in it, but it was not included in the final contract. It is not something, again, this is a factual witness, not an expert witness, and factual witnesses normally are subpoenaed and normally are not recompensed for their activity in that regards.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman
you
Johnson.
know, it might be, thank you, Mr. Chair, it might be one of these things, and I'm hoping we can get beyond this soon and move on to other business of the day, but it might be one of these things, hey, I'll send these guys a bill and see if they pay it type thing. I don't know if that's true or not, but I was subpoenaed here recently for the Occupy Pensacola people, and I wasn't going to invoice the city of Pensacola for the time that I spent giving that deposition. So, I'm ready to move on. I would like to make a motion to deny this payment.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Substitute motion.
Pardon
Is
me.
that a substitute motion, or was there ever?
No, there was never a motion.
Okay.
Mr. Councilman Johnson has made a motion that we do not compensate this Abramson as per the invoice that he has submitted. And we have a second. No further discussion. All those in, pardon me? Pardon me, I apologize. My mentor has pointed out that I have not recognized anyone in the audience if they care to speak. I see someone smiling but not wanting to speak. And
Move
all
quick.
right, thank you. All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. That concludes our discussion items. Action items, excuse me. Discussion items. Yes,
I
Mr.
did-
Hall. Councilman Hall.
Regarding that last vote and the point that Dr. Pratt raised, I would like to recommend to staff that when they bring something like this forward again, because, and Mr. Gerald's absolutely right, we can vote for it or against it, but that when the memo comes out, that there is, some sort of position that clarifies the administration's point of view on it, because I read it too, and it looked like that the administration was very pro on this. Doesn't mean we've got to go along with it, but that just worked better for me, a little more.
That might be a ploy on their part to make sure we don't pass it. Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The only comment is that the only thing administration wanted to have done in this case is to have this body determine what they wanted done with the bill. And now we're satisfied.
Thank you. Yes.
In the past, if there was not a recommendation, it was made a discussion item with a summary, and you simply delete the recommendation portion, just like in our cow agenda.
Right, and I appreciate us having this conversation. I too felt that there was some confusion and feel partly to blame in that the way it was presented to you all, it could have been construed that as chairperson that I was advocating it, and I will make a better point myself to clearly demonstrate to you all the origin of and the path of a recommendation or an action item. All right? Thank you. All right, it's 4:37, discussion items. None. Any new business? All right. Meeting adjourned.
bro? I'm doing good. I just want to keep moving. I got something. I got to leave about 6:15. Yeah,
Let's
so
get going.
I got an hour and a half.
Great.
So we got to.
We got forum, we're good.
6:15. About 3 hours here today is all I can.
All you can take.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be that way.
Did a great job.
Now, they've been under control, isn't it? Who knows where we'll get.
Yeah.
I think it's all summary, and you deleted that, just like.
Oh, what's the
Very
problem?
last thing.
Yeah, let me make you
Sure.
some room over here.
Yeah.
Whoever signed the chambers here for presentation.
Committee of the Whole is now in session. We just do have a quorum here. Open up the very beginning of this, the Boyd Forum. There should be some yellow slips of paper in the back for anybody wishing to address the committee. At this point, you get to pick the topic. I just ask that you keep your remarks down to 1 minute. We give some leeway with that, but we shoot for the 1 minute. And if you have longer remarks, just ask that you join us on Thursday night for 2 different opportunities to speak at open forum. We have 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and then unlimited time at the end of the meeting. So, we have any yellows? Okay. Okay. Any turned in yet? Okay. All right. Seeing nobody rise, and that we'll move on to council actions. Appointment, General Pension Board. Recommendation that City Council appoint an individual to fill the unexpired term of Richard Hawkins on the General Pension Board, expiring June 30th. We have ballots included. Okay, yeah, right here in front of you. Dr. Wu is not here. Dr. Pratt, you nominated Steve Davidson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I nominated Mr. Davidson. He's from Pensacola. He recently moved back, and he has experience in risk management, and I think he knows how to crunch numbers and is a very thoughtful, engaged person, and I think he would be a great asset to this board.
Is any relation to Scott?
No.
Is Mr. Davidson here?
He is not, I don't think.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to Mr. Navoda, the nominated by Dr. Wu.
Mr. Mick Navoda and I serve on the Council on Aging together, and when he retired, he said he'd like to serve the city in some capacity, but he didn't specify what. And so when this opened up, he has a long banking background, and so basically I nominated him for that reason.
Okay. Is Mr. Navoda here? No? Okay. Any other, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I've known Mr. Navoda, I have to speak up, for 25, 30 years, and been in the banking, finance business, retirement business forever, and he's actually done some work with him. Very impressed by his professionalism and his abilities. So I'm not sure, I don't know Mr. Davidson, but I do know Mr. Navoda, and very impressed with his skills. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments for either one of these? Okay. Please just mark and sign your ballots. Thank you. And while those votes are being counted, we'll move on to mayor communications and actions. Mr. Reynolds, we spoke right before the meeting, and I believe there was one item that you wanted to pull.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 6, which is the item on Port of Pensacola policies and procedures revisions. Based upon some conversations that I've had this morning, it appears that there's some information out and about that's not quite correct, and I want to have the opportunity to educate all of the board, specifically, I guess, re-educate in regards to the Mayor's Pension Advisory Committee, and this action specifically is going forward to take some of those advisory committee actions and bringing them forward to you. But I know it's been some time since there's been a report on that, so I'd like the opportunity to re-educate specifically on that issue. So we would request that that item be pulled. Also, the mayor this morning had put a letter out to the mayor of Gulf Breeze agreeing to a 45-day window to try to finish negotiations on a contract with Gulf Breeze. So I'm also asking that the attorney's item number 10 be pulled to allow that 45-day window to move forward. And we're all eagerly anticipating closing that deal with the city of Gulf Breeze. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and are you okay with that, Mr. Messer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You said, I think
you
you said
restate
item
number-
6, but you meant item 20, right? Item 6 was the port one, and item 20 is the drop. Is that, I just wanted to clarify.
No, I'm talking about item number 6, which is the Port Advisory Committee recommendations.
Okay.
That essentially that we are
something
putting
threw
into
me
the
off.
policy.
Okay, all
Did I
right.
say drop? If I said drop, my apologies.
Or, yeah,
Okay.
I got somewhere, I got the pension in there somewhere.
I did too.
Okay, I'm not hearing that.
Yes.
Yeah, and just for the.
Oh, I think I said I wanted to drop the item number 6. I think that's what it was. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the edification of council members, although you may recall, hopefully, that I did brief you, I believe, Wednesday on this item. The mayor of Gulf Breeze's correspondence was sent sometime after that briefing. It's sort of overtaken by events. So at this point, I agree that the best thing to do is pull the item, and we'll see what transpires.
Okay, for those who are following in the audience at home, item 6 and 10 have been pulled. Item number 2, sir. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Nevada is the newest member of the General Pension Board.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second item on our agenda today is special magistrate. The recommendation is that council appoint Lou Ray as the City of Pensacola special magistrate under the terms of his current contract, thus removing the interim status, and that council appoint Deborah Little and Robert Beasley as alternate special magistrates.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion, second. Discussion from committee. The audience. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 3, sir.
Mr. President, the next item on our agenda is Law Enforcement Trust Fund purchases. The recommendation is that City Council approve the attached supplemental budget resolution for the purchase of Smart IR Portal from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund in the amount of $3,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Discussion from the audience. Seeing none, please vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. Item 4.
Mr. President, item number 4 is resolution supporting Florida Emerald Coast Clean Cities Coalition. The recommendation is that City Council approve a resolution supporting the Florida Emerald Coast Clean Cities Coalition.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion. Audience? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 5.
Mr. President, item number 5 is resolution supporting Choice Neighborhoods Planning Grant application. The recommendation is that City Council approve a resolution supporting the Choice Neighborhoods Planning Grant application to be filed with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, by the Area Housing Commission, AHC.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. From the audience? All in favor?
Mr.
wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Geralds.
I looked at the material and I had some questions about the areas that have been identified as, let's see, the targeted areas Is there anyone here from anywhere that can tell us why we're on that side of town? And as I do believe, part of Inglewood is in the Escambia County, and a part of that Brownsville area is also in Escambia County. But is there anyone here from staff that can sort of break this down a little bit and explain why those two areas were selected?
Mr. Reynolds, I see you have had somebody join you.
Yes, Mr. President, we do. We have Helen Gibson, the Mayor's Chief of Neighborhoods, who can address that issue.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council Chairperson, Councilman Gerald, and our distinguished council members. Yes, the application was actually put together as a collaborative effort by both the Area Housing Commission, the county, and the city, as well as some other nonprofits that have joined us. The key thing about the Choice Neighborhoods grant is that it has to focus on public housing sites. J Street housing is located within the county and is outside of the city, and Addicts Court is within the city. But the goal of the grant, the planning grant and the planning effort, is to look within a 2-mile radius of that site. So everything within that boundary would be within that 2-mile radius. And it would be fairly prescriptive to limit the planning area simply to the area immediately around the Addicts Court when we're looking at 2 public housing sites. And the goal of the grant opportunity is to transform the neighborhoods surrounding those sites as well as the sites themselves.
Okay, good. That's a good, reasonable explanation. I follow it clearly now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very
Anyone else on committee? The audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Bless you.
Question?
No, bless you. Somebody sneezed. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I won't say it in the microphone anymore. It's a
Okay,
reflex.
that one's unanimous. Item 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item number 7 is change order number 1, Hewitt Street Reconstruction and Stormwater Enhancement Project. The recommendation is that City Council approve additional project funding in the amount of $21,434.85 associated with the change order number 1 with Crestview Site and Underground Incorporated for the construction of the Hewitt Street Reconstruction and Stormwater Enhancement Project.
Committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion, second, discussion. Audience? Saying none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Number 8.
Mr. President, item number 8 on our agenda is award of contract bid number 12-012, FY 2012 Street Rehabilitation Project. The recommendation is that City Council award a contract for construction of the FY 2012 Street Rehabilitation Project to Panhandle Grading and Paving Incorporated, Pensacola, Florida, the lowest and most responsible bidder with a base bid of $1,459,572.13 as adjusted for reduced quantities to meet budget, plus additive alternate number 1, Wind Chase Bay condos in the amount of $91,200, and additive alternate number 2, Fire Station number 6 in the amount of $12,750, for a total award of $1,563,522.13. Further, the City Council approved the supplemental budget resolution appropriating $65,000 for the contribution from ECUA.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Reynolds, do you know, is this Jerry Long's company? Did anybody on your staff know? Okay, Mr. Garza's nodding back there. Yeah. All right, thanks. Any discussion? Mr. Townsend?
I'm just
Vice
wondering,
President.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. I'm just wondering if I could get a little explanation regarding the circumstances surrounding the Wind Bay condo issue, please.
Absolutely, Sarah. Mr. Garza can address that for you.
Council members. Mr. Townsend, the Wind Chase Condo Association came to us with the request that we incorporate their project into the bid. They're funding it at 100%. It's not costing the city one dime. The advantage to them is they're taking advantage of the scale of the project.
And they are doing 100%.
Yes, sir, 100%. We will not proceed with any of that work until they deposit that money with the city of Pensacola.
Thank you.
Anybody? Yes, Ms. Deweese.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like some clarification on there's been some changes to the map, and one is quite painful in my district, one of the longest streets, and actually half was paved in the last budget cycle, and then this other half was due to be paved. I may not be able to walk my dog for the next year, but the way I understand this is that this is absolutely going to be, the ones being taken off the list will be put on the next year's list with priority, even if the grading is not exactly, in line with the poorest, but that the ones being taken off the bottom of the list. I know Councilman Townsend's district is, I think, in just as much pain as mine, but what assurances do we have that will be done? That's the only concern I have.
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Reynolds and his staff on that. It's been my experience, though, and that they likely would be high up on the list next time, but that Mr. Garza's team reevaluates every street segment in town and ranks them, and it could be that there's others that, in the course of that funding cycle,
in the year,
became worse.
That deteriorate, sure.
And if I may, Mr. President, that's exactly right. I don't want to lead the council astray and say that these absolutely will positively be in the next funding cycle. However, the chances are pretty good that they will be. And the reason I don't want to absolutely positively say that is because if we have some natural problem that causes a washout somewhere that we were not considering, or if there's some other issues that cause some massive deconstruction somewhere else, well, then that's where we're going to propose that we spend our dollars. But I think it's a relatively safe bet that you will see these on that project list, because they are the ones they will then go into the next funding cycle as those being at top, but then once they're reevaluated, it may fluctuate a little bit.
Okay. And I know there's very reasonable technical data that's put into this. I've seen the map of potholes and everything else that they do over in Public Works, and I'm impressed with what they do know about our streets and how they are taking care of them. So thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The ECUA manhole costs, is that the costs associated with the recent manhole action that's going on all over the west side now?
Councilman Townsend, no, sir. What's going along the west side of town right now is their manhole, lamp hole rehabilitation. They've got a number of manholes that were constructed in the late 1800s, early 1900s that have no bottoms, and they have quite a few line terminuses that don't have manholes. They've got what they refer to as a lamp hole, and the theory was that you could hang a lamp down in this small opening and an inspector could see it from the other end. Well, it doesn't really facilitate properly maintaining the lines with camera equipment and today's cleaning equipment. So there's about 150 manholes currently in ECUA Southwest District, over in Warrington and in Pensacola, that they're trying to address right now. So that's a separate issue from adjusting these manholes to the finished grade after the street's repaved.
Just as a side issue, I know that I've been told that they intend to come back and do the necessary repair, resurfacing, and those kinds of things once they get enough whereby they can call a contractor in. The concern that I have, they are really making a mess of those streets and really got some nasty holes in there. So I think it's incumbent upon us to check them out and maybe put some sort of alert, flashing light or something of that nature to ensure that folks don't be speeding through there and then tap the car. Because if they are going to wait until they get all of that manhole repair, before they actually go back and start doing the resurfacing, it will be an issue. So I suggest that, if possible, would you take these comments under consideration and look at it?
Yes, sir. That issue was brought to our attention last week. We followed up with ECUA, and their project manager is aware of our concerns now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Audience? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Was there any opposition? Okay, all right. That passes unanimously. Number 9.
Mr. President, item number 9 is award of contract bid number 12-022 Bayfront Parkway Medium Landscaping Project. The recommendation is that City Council award a contract for the landscaping of the Bayfront Parkway Median Islands to Executive Landscaping Incorporated of Pensacola, Florida. The lowest and most responsible bidder with a base bid of $219,136 plus alternate number 1 first year's maintenance in the amount of $16,360, alternate number 2 median opening removal in the amount of $9,000, and alternate number 3 landscaping median removal area in the amount of $5,145 for a total award of $249,640 plus a 10% contingency. Further, that City Council approve the supplemental budget resolution appropriating $250,000 for the FDOT grant.
Committee.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Discussion. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering, well, I already had asked that the role of the Tree Planting Trust Fund is sort of the matching grant. It's the part that the FDOT can't cover. But I guess in looking at it right now, the first year's maintenance is $16,000. I hope that it will go down over time, and that will be covered out of the Tree Trust Fund. I'm assuming we're making it pretty low maintenance. It's just the first year you have to establish it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pratt. And you are right in that respect, and also we will be taking over that maintenance then after that first year.
Right. So, but it will be much less than $16,000 a year in the year.
It will be what it is.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee? The audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We didn't even have to go through the presentation on that, did we? Nope. Brings us to discussion items. Mr. Heiser and your team, if you join us up here, please. Welcome, Mr. Heiser. I'm going to excuse myself here for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I will be right back because I'm really interested in what you have to say. But go ahead and begin without me.
Great. You ready for us now, then?
Want to wait 3 minutes?
We'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll take a break.
Sure, okay.
We want the president to hear.
Okay. I just want to thank everybody for your patience. That was much needed.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the break. Okay, Mr. Heiser, who's yours?
Mr. President, we very much appreciate this time. As you well know, we try to get over here every few months to kind of fill you in as to where we are with respect to our programming. And before I go any further, I just want to recognize the gentleman who's sitting back behind me, Donnie McMahon, who is our current board chairman. And you're about to hear the kind of successes we've had this year, and any success that we have had this year and will continue to have comes as a result of Donnie's outstanding leadership. And so we appreciate the time that he has dedicated to serving as our chairman. He's not been selling a lot of insurance because he's been so dedicated to building a better community and a better organization. And so we thank him for that. I also want to simply say thank you to all of you because you are a crucial investor in our programs. And we're, again, about ready to talk about our successes, but you folks are the catalyst for that kind of success because you give us the support we need to go out and do the things that we're doing. We are building a world-class economic development organization. When I first arrived in the community, I made that commitment to you, and we are doing it one step at a time. Some of you have heard me say this, but bears repeating that when I get to the end of the week, I look back and say, all right, did we make measurable progress this week or didn't we? And I can honestly say every single week that I've been in Northwest Florida, I've been able to look back at the end of the week and say, we made measurable progress this past week. And that's not to say we don't have a long way to go, because we sure as heck do. But I'm so proud of our team. You're about to hear from our key staff here. Many of them are new. The 6 vice presidents I inherited, 5 of them are no longer with the chamber, and so we have a lot of new faces. But there's a lot of energy. Every single staff member now shares my commitment to excellence, and we approach every single day with a sense of urgency because we're very much aware of the fact that there are a lot of eyes on us, and there are a lot of folks that have high expectations on us, and so we owe it to all of our supporters, including the city of Pensacola, to give 110% every single day. And so with all that said, I want to start out, before I turn Craig Dalton loose to talk about armed services and governmental affairs. I mentioned the support that we had received. As you all well know, we raised support for economic development through Vision 2015. Our objective was to create 3,000 jobs over 5 years, and you're going to hear in a moment where we are in that quest. But our goal was to raise $6.5 million for our 5-year program. As we sit here today, we have 116 total investors, and we've raised over $8.6 million. So we have blown away our original objective of raising 6.5 by over $2 million. And so the great news is that the business community, the private sector, in the middle of a recession, in the middle of an oil spill recovery, has stepped up to the plate and said, you know what, we've got to support economic development and we've got to support job creation through Vision 2015. The bad news is that we have no excuses now not to produce 3,000 new jobs. So, but we are well on our way, and so I actually believe that we will reach 3,000 new jobs before 2015 at the rate we're going at present. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go vice president to vice president. We're going to start out with Craig Dalton, who's Vice President of Armed Services and Governmental Affairs. And since Craig has another commitment, after his presentation, he'll be happy to take your questions regarding his area. And then we'll go through the rest of our presentations. And if you have any questions beyond that, hopefully we can save those until after everyone has presented. So at this point, I'm pleased to introduce to you Craig Dalton.
Thank you. I just want to show you the first slide. This is the economic impact of the military in Escambia County. It's by far and away the largest economic engine for our county, and quite frankly for the Gulf Coast, it's the largest economic engine. 22,000 out there. They're all great paying jobs, as you guys are aware, and they've invested over $1 billion between the Navy and the Air Force in the last 6 years. In fact, that number, the military and the federal employees over the past 6 years has climbed steadily. So now that we face defense cutbacks, and we've been reading about that quite a bit, and I'll comment on that in another slide, Pensacola continues to do pretty good overall as we compare ourselves to our competitors throughout the United States for defense missions and defense jobs. A few highlights that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and that's the great thing about the partnerships between us as a community and the military. And one of those, a great example, is the SPICE legislation that we just got passed this session. Spice, if you're not familiar with it, is a synthetic marijuana, and it first appeared at NAS Pensacola, believe it or not, and they made us aware of it prior. This is before the state agencies knew. This is before our local law enforcement knew it was on the streets in Florida. So we, as a community, were the first to actually realize that. The chairman of that committee was Jeff DeWeese, and we formed a specific task force to deal with this spice legislation or spice issue before it reached into our schools, our university, and before it reached into our high school. So we were very aggressive. Spice is legal. You can buy it anywhere, over the internet, at a gas station, did not matter. There's no way to regulate it at the time. And so we became very aggressive through our task force, and got the help of University of West Florida and some of our other members from the Escambia County School District to work hard to get that thing pushed through. And I'm happy to announce that spice is illegal in the state of Florida now, and that all has to do with our community military partnership and the base commanders pushing that issue to get that thing, get that drug off our streets in Florida. So that's one of the great things about what we do as a community. It's not just about, it is a lot to do about growing that mission and the and job count, but also the good tertiary benefits of a partnership when you see something like that appear in a community like ours. We're planning the Military Appreciation Month for 2012. Last year we finished up a great year, and I'll talk a little bit about the centennial, and this year we're going to continue that. And the great thing about working with the city is that we have a lot to offer, and we're building ambassadors. Every student, every instructor, every person who's they're going on into areas that will definitely affect our future. They're going to make decisions that will impact the future of NAS Pensacola. We know that. And so we have to take every opportunity that we have to build those ambassadors, to build those relationships so that they take that feeling of Pensacola on. And fortunately, particularly with the new baseball stadium and the Wahoos, we're going to build some really good ambassadors this year. And so that is the goal, is to continue to do downtown things with them and then take them to the ball games. Another aspect that we've been working on for quite a while, but it's really starting to take root, is our international relations program. And if you're not aware, there's a program called Foreign Military Sales. We're heavily engaged in foreign military sales in the sense that we're supporting the Navy as they sell aircraft. Why do we want them to sell aircraft to foreign governments? Because they do most of their training right here. There's a huge tail behind a sale of an aircraft, and a lot of that tail happens right here in Pensacola. So we've partnered with the Navy to help them sell. And so they invite potential buyers to our community. In fact, we've just hosted the Saudis and their top military leadership here in Pensacola. In fact, it was related to me, or I didn't realize this, but 3 of them would have made the Forbes top 20 in wealth. So they were very serious about what they were doing. They were very impressed with what they experienced in Pensacola. And one of the things that they really like is that we're an engaged community, and we're going to look out for their students as they come through the training pipeline here, and that's very important when you send your students abroad. And then the last thing on highlights, and I'm sure you've been reading a lot about it, is BRAC, and base realignment closure and defense cuts. And so we just recently completed our 5-county coalition, defense coalition fly-in 2 weeks ago. Obviously the topic is, how is defense spending cuts going to affect Pensacola? Where is base realignment and closure? Defense Secretary Leon Panetta announced essentially a sentence that said we'll start that as soon as 2013. And then 2015 and then 2017. Yes, sir. Oh, our 5 counties. I'm sorry. That's Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, Walton, Bay. We formed that 5 years ago, and it has been a tremendous success. Before, it was kind of us against the world, or whether it was Fort Walton against the world. Now, when we go as 5 counties, they listen to what we say. Our issues are pretty much all the same, and so we support each other, and it's worked out great. It really has. And so we've seen a lot of, as far as potential MILCON projects throughout the Gulf Coast, and that has everything to do with MILCON is military construction. I'm sorry, that has a lot to do with our coalition. I will tell you that the services are not inclined, other than the Air Force, to do a base realignment and closure, but there is no political appetite for that to happen in 2013. And in fact, I will say that Congressman Miller emphatically said that 2013, 2015 are probably off the table, and we're looking more like 2017 if that's still, if we don't pull out of this economic mess that we're in. So the Defense Department has done a number of things to cut into defense spending, but fortunately for aviation and naval aviation, that's part of the next decade long-term strategic plan for Department of Defense, and that is good for business for NAS Pensacola to be part of that long-term strategic plan. I'm not saying never, but it does look better for us than it does for other communities throughout the United States. And so, as you know, we're very diligent on growing missions out at NAS Pensacola. That's probably our number one thing that we're trying to do is the existing missions, but we're also trying to diversify our missions. And it's not just about aviation, it's also about other components of that. And there's a big healthcare component to that. If strategic health intelligence is our healthcare diversification component of military innovations that we started 4 years ago. That's in partnership with our hospitals and the Naval Hospital. And I'm happy to announce that we are known as the #1 site in America for sharing health information as a test site. We're the #1 site for the state of Florida. We were showcased at the largest healthcare conference in the world a month and a half ago as the premier site for doing test and evaluation and sharing clinical information for the purpose of innovation. And what that does is that it starts to attract other organizations that want to participate, particularly the private sector, and that means jobs. So
we're collaborative effort with, say, Baptist and Sacred Heart of those?
Yes, sir. Sacred Heart and Baptist is on our board of directors, and they are, I will tell you that they are sharing clinical information. They sit side by side. They work together great. It is something that we're really proud of, and I don't think that that could happen in too many environments other than one just like this. And the whole goal, there's 3 goals to that, and one of them is to, one, provide better health care, and 2, to give us competitive advantage on health care costs for this community. If we can figure out ways using electronic data to reduce tests, to reduce all the things that drive up healthcare costs in this community. If we can reduce that, then it's better for business. And when it's better for business, that means companies want to grow here. That means they want to be here. And so it's been a huge success for us. Another part of our diversification project is that we've been working very closely with the Center for Information Dominance, and last fall we received some seed money, and we're building a cyber warfare battle lab here in Pensacola. It will be an opportunity for the private sector and the Department of Defense to jointly work on a laboratory environment where information warfare, information security assurance can be collaborative worked on and tested. And also it's a training device as well, so the latest and greatest spamware, malware, things that are exploiting our networks, our national networks, will be tested right here. We're the first community in America to try this because it's a joint effort. While I was in D.C. 2 weeks ago, I was invited by Senator Rubio's staff to sit in on Senate Armed Services Committee. They were doing a hearing on Cyber Command. And the General Alexander, the head of Cyber Command, said that one of the primary things that they are lacking is that they don't have private sector partnerships. So in some ways, they don't even know what's attacking our nation's networks. If you're probably aware of this, maybe not, but most people feel like they'll never drop another bomb again to start a war. It will be taken down through the internet, your your aviation, your airports, your financial systems. I mean, it'll be things like that to create enough chaos, market chaos, healthcare. So this is very important to the security of our nation, and it's happening right here in Pensacola, and we're the leaders on that, and that's through a chamber-led initiative to grow that component here. And the final slide is the Centennial of Naval Aviation. This is something as a community we can all be proud of. The Centennial, 100 years, most of that all happened here in Pensacola. We had the governor kick it off out at NAS. We had several events throughout the year. It ended on a big celebration in downtown Pensacola. A lot of good things happen as far as educating the community, the importance of aviation, and our significant portion of that. But it also created ambassadors, again, for the military to say, hey, Pensacola has it figured out. And and one of the best compliments that this community got is we are by far and away the best community when it came to celebrating this 100-year celebration. We didn't, and there was not big money associated with that. We did it because it was the right thing to do, and that paid off for us. Is there any questions? Yes, sir.
Maybe I missed it, but the conversation about BRAC and those kind of, having your deliberations about that, recognizing that naval aviation is the trend from the Pentagon right now, and that's going to be our really strong defense, if you will, naval aviation. But you know, they're always talking about consolidation of the PLO training, the whiting, and those kinds of things. So I assume that you're constantly on target and having your deliberation about when they do have those meetings, that you will be in attendance and have position papers and those kinds of things, arguing against any further delineation of any of our activities here.
Yes, sir. In fact, you talk about those position papers. When Leon Panetta said that, Secretary of Defense said that, we were on it like that because we went into super overdrive. But we've been aggressive for the last 5 years. Just because it says base realignment enclosure, that you almost root for that because there's a commission and it's public hearings and there's a process. When you look at defense spending cuts, the services can do pretty much whatever they want to do to make budget. There is not a public hearing for that. So we are extremely aggressive to make sure that those types of ideas don't get too far down the road. We want to make sure that...
Let me interrupt you. You said they don't have any more meetings up there where you can go in and present your position to them anymore?
If they actually have a BRAC, a BRAC that's commissioned by Congress, yes, they do. Yes, sir. But right now, with defense spending cuts, they just do what they need to do to make budget. And so that's in some ways scarier than a BRAC.
They did have those kinds of meetings, and I have attended some, where we went in and made an argument for our position here in Pensacola in terms of not the importance of retaining certain positions and those kinds of things here in Pensacola. You don't have that opportunity anymore submitting documents or any of that thing?
We do if it does occur, which could be as early as 2015 or 2017. Fortunately, we have a retired admiral here that can help articulate the need to keep that type of training here, and we've got a whole committee that's designated towards that. So it's just part of the workflow, and we're ready to roll on something like that.
Greg,
yes, sir.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to congratulate you on surviving the realignment.
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Jim.
Does anybody else have anything for Mr. Mack? Okay, Ms. Kaiser, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
You know, earlier, Mr. President, I recognized Donnie McMahon, and our next speaker is someone else that I want to recognize. Scott Luth, I recruited Scott. Scott and I we worked together in the state of Kentucky, and I had an opportunity to see how he operated, and I knew that his sense of urgency, his project management, his knowledge, his contact base was exactly what we needed in terms of leading our economic development efforts. And I couldn't be happier that he accepted my invitation to come to Northwest Florida. And absolutely, he was my number one pick from day one when I knew that I needed a new senior VP of economic development. So, Scott, I'm going to let you take it over from there.
Jim, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come and work in this community, in this area. It's been a true privilege, and it's been a great transition for myself and my family, and so I want to thank everybody for that. Mr. President and Council, I want to start out by just reminding everybody just about the economic development process. Some folks know, and some folks, need to be reminded every once in a while. The process is a process of elimination. Most of the companies that we deal with in our department have a choice. They either have a choice to stay here, expand here, or if it's a company that's actually deciding to actually locate here. And that process is very competitive. It's all about minimizing risk. What can we do to make sure that we're successful in the area and the location that we move to or invest in? And that's really what kind of sets the stage of everything that we do out of our department, is how do we help those companies make a decision and make the right decision to invest in this area or in this particular community. Another thing I want to remind folks is that economic development is a team sport and a team process. We lean upon our allies and our support network quite a bit. We look to the help of the city, we look to the help of the county when it's appropriate, and also our regional partners and everything from our workforce development, our universities, the Pensacola State, and those that really help us bring all of those resources together to actually become a successful economic development team. And that's the things that we're continuing to build upon right now. The slide that you're seeing here is just a sampling of some of the projects that we've worked and we have been successful on. We've got, and you can kind of go through those and take a look at them. Next slide, please. When you look at all of those, and you also look at some of the other projects that we worked, and I'll touch base with those in just a minute. Again, we have been successful in announcing 357 new jobs and 63.1 million in total capital investment. Those numbers come specifically with projects that we've worked. Other things are going on in the community, and that's wonderful. I mean, we've had some other companies that have actually had some expansion, and they've done those on their own, and we encourage the folks to do that, and we support them through training and some other programs. But this particular job announcement we have, which is 357, has actually been, I guess, verified by what we have as an internal benchmarking committee within the Chamber of Commerce. And they actually look at those projects, and what they're looking for is, have we played a significant role in the decision-making process for those particular companies to choose to either expand here, relocate here, or stay in the community, and that's what those numbers represent so far. And that's really what we're heading towards on our Vision 2015 job commitment of those 3,000 jobs over this 5-year period. Next slide, please. As far as our business recruitment and retention, just to kind of give you an idea, we've got 15 active projects right now that we're continuing to work on an ongoing basis. What's really exciting to me is the diversity of those projects, and it's truly across the board. We have companies right now that we're working with that are looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 employees, and looking and considering expanding in the community or actually moving in, all the way up to projects that are 4, 5, 10 times those numbers, 200 or 300 in employment. Those range from aerospace type companies that we're speaking with. We're also working with back office contact center type projects, metal fabrication projects. We're also continuing to work with projects that have an interest down at the port. So that's what's really exciting right now. It's not in any one particular industry sector, but it's truly across the board. These are companies that are looking at the downtown Pensacola area. They're looking at our partner communities over in Santa Rosa County. They're looking at properties in Escambia County. And we just can see that and expect that to continue. One of the other focus that we work on all the time, and that's getting out and meeting with and visiting with our existing industry base. To date, this year, we've had 82 existing industry visits, and that's been a big focus for the Chamber of Commerce, especially in the 6 months that I've been here, is getting out and meeting with our companies. We try to meet with several companies every single day if it's possible, and works with our schedule and theirs. We want to find out what's going on in the community. What do we need to do to help support those companies that are in our community making contributions? The numbers are correct. Anywhere from 75 to 80% of our job creation is going to come from our existing industry base, and if we're not out there talking to those those companies and trying to provide assistance to those companies, we're not going to be able to help them and make sure that they're capitalizing on the things that are out there. That's one of the misnomers that a lot of folks don't understand is the incentives and the programs that are available to all companies, not just the new companies that announce and come into the area. They're available to those existing industries as well. If a company's going to create 10 jobs over a 3-year period and they fall into one of the state's industry sectors, then they're eligible for some type of help and support. And that's the message that we always try to get out is please call the chamber, let us know, and if we can help you, we will. Big part of what we do is we try to get out and meet with the site selection professionals that are out there across the country. One of the most recent events we did was a Celebrity Chefs event in New York in partnership with our tourism partners. We brought in six site selectors from the New York area to visit with us and let us talk about all the great things that are happening in the Pensacola MSA region. And this really just gave us an opportunity to really showcase what we have. They had a chance to actually visit with the governor while he was actually in New York at the time, and they were actually able to hear firsthand from the governor what the state of Florida is doing to attract interest and additional investment into the state. So it was a great event that we continue to partner with. We're also working with our other regional partners on making sure that we're getting our message out there, our Florida's Great Northwest, as well as the state of Florida, and making sure that they know that the resources we have. We hosted the entire state of Florida project management team in about 2 weeks ago. We had 8 of the folks in. We actually had a chance to tour the Navy Federal site, look at some of our industrial park property, and also go through the newly opened Flight Academy. And a lot of the folks, even though they work for the state, we work projects with them, some of them have actually never been in the community before. And so that was one of the big focus we had, is get the folks here, make sure they understand what our products are, build that relationship, and so as projects come about and opportunities come about, they can actually work with us firsthand and have that knowledge when they need it. Other things that we continue to do, and that's was work on our product development. The Pensacola Technology Campus, the construction that you've seen out there, if you've noticed, is we did have some funding left over with our EDA grant. Of course, this project is a partnership between the PDC, the city, and the county. We went ahead and put in a parking solution down there. As we continue to try to market the site down there, we want to make sure that we were able to address some of the questions that they may have as far as where folks were going to park, at least as we began construction. Our hope long term, as we fill up that space, buildings come in, and more employees are out there, then we'll look to a longer term solution with parking. You know, whether that's a formal partnership with the Civic Center, whether that's a parking deck for the region. Those things are yet to be determined and really are too soon in the process to really finalize. Where we're moving now that the park has been finished, all the infrastructure is in place, we'll be doing some type of formal dedication here coming up pretty soon. And then really we begin to move into our marketing phase of that. We have actually spoken with several companies that have an interest in the park. Some of them are large enough that would justify their own construction. Some of those companies may actually take 3 or 4 of them to come together and form a much larger project just with several of those companies with interest in space. So the park itself is really doing what we hope that it would. It's driving interest. It's really driving a renewed interest in doing construction downtown and around that true ability on the live, work, and play that we want to kind of see happen in within the city in this area. Other things that we're looking at is our fast track sites and building database. One of the things that I ran into when I first got here is really having a good understanding of what the available products were out in the community. We've got some great volunteers headed up by Fred Donovan and also Sonny Granger, kind of help us head this committee up. And what this is we're actually going out and we're cataloging all of our available buildings and sites in the community and working with our brokerage community along with a partnership with NAOP to get that done. Again, one of the things that we have is if you don't know what your product is, how do you sell it? And that's what Fast Track is doing. That's what its name is. We are trying to fast track this process to make sure that we understand what our building stock is, what the deficiencies are, if there are any with those buildings, what the attributes are, and that way when we do get those calls, we can respond, and we can respond quicker to any of those requests for information that might be out there. Another great project that we have, and that's our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. It's another focus in our area is working with our small business startups and also our high growth companies within the community. This is a partnership with Pensacola State. We're on our 3rd year of this project. We are renovating our 2nd floor And this building is it's downtown on Garden Street. It's the same building that you see the Gulf Power kind of satellite bill paying set up in. Again, we've one complete floor. We're about 78% occupancy there. We knew it was time to grow, and we're probably about a month away from finishing that second floor renovation. That'll give us around, I think it's around 12, 13 office spaces when we're done. We currently have around, we've got 3 companies in there now. Analyst group right now has grown from 9 employees up to 17. We've got a total of 28 employees in the facility right now, and we have 4 or 5 companies with an interest in space on our second floor even prior to opening up. So we know we're doing the right thing. We know there's a lot of good companies out there that are wanting to grow. They're wanting to move from their home-based business actually into space and have their own office space, and this is a project that we're very excited about. Just keep in mind, again, we don't see this as a competition with space that's in the community. Our goal is to incubate those companies out within about a 3-year period. But we want those companies to be as self-sustaining and have the wherewithal to move into other buildings in the community and be long-term tenants. And that's the process of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I think at this time, I will turn it over to Val Lento to kind of give you an update on tourism programs.
Are there any exit barriers that the city might have that's causing you some issues regarding attracting business here? And do we have any specific incentives that we possibly could explore to assist you in helping business to get here?
At this time, there are no really specific barriers that I'm aware of that are in place. Some of the advantage that we do have is with the enterprise zone that we have in the community. As that possibly comes up for renewal, we may want to take a look at that. How do we expand that to other areas of the community that may need that assistance? But that's been a great additional incentive that we've used a number of times, and companies have taken advantage of that. So at this time, I'm not aware of any specific issues that we have that are preventing growth from the community, but there may be some things that we want to look at that would kind of help entice additional development as we move forward. Yes, sir.
Councilman, if I could also address that, as you look at this within the city limits, and we look at our opportunities for economic development, you look at things such as, or assets such as the port, you look at the tech park, you look at the former Escambia treating facility, and then you look at an asset like the airport. And specifically with regard to the Port of Pensacola, some of our most exciting job creation opportunities that Scott and his department are working on are tied to that port and the opportunities we have with respect to servicing the oil industry and the shipping companies and the other companies that service the oil industry. And that's the reason why we asked for $2 million in the budget this year from the state, is to make needed improvements to the port to get it to the point where it's more marketable. And so if there's any one issue that is on our minds as opposed in terms of an obstacle that is preventing us from moving forward, it's that we don't have all the pieces in place yet to be successful at the Port of Pensacola. And we know that the opportunities are immense. And a week doesn't go by that we're not faced with another opportunity. And so that's why that $2 million was so very important. The latest, it has not been vetoed. The latest we're still working with it. So the governor's not yet vetoed it. But I would say that is an obstacle that we have at present that is on our minds. And I think we should anticipate that we're probably going to need additional funding to really reach our full potential with regard to the port.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I am representing the tourism arm of the Chamber of Commerce, Visit Pensacola, and our Vice President of Tourism is sorry that he could not be here, but I will be presenting our report. I'm the Director of Communications. Tourism, as you know, is a huge driver for the area, $1.2 billion industry, accounting for about 18,000 jobs. To date, we have approximately 8,000 hotel rooms, 2,000 condos and beach homes available to tourists. As far as lodging, last year, of course, was a record-breaking year for tourism, and we were very happy that that was the case, and we're hoping to position ourselves to have another year like the last one. We were up 27.4% from $127.6 million in 2010, which of course is very, very significant. As far as the four-county area, that was an increase of approximately 26.4%, and then our hotel occupancy, which is extremely interesting when we start dissecting into the markets that came down and that perhaps started to vacation here that hadn't in the past. We were up 3% from 2010, and that is with an increased ADR, which of course is great news for our lodging and accommodations providers. What we saw is a great correlation between our increased advertising, increased marketing funds that became available, and the kind of penetration that we could have in different markets. Site visitation, as you see that, and that is visits to visitpensacola.com, were up 43% from the year prior, which in the web world is extremely significant. We saw our campaign site visitation, which means how people were referred to our website was through some specific campaign, and that was up 303%, which basically tells us that the campaigns not only were successful, but they were more visible with more reach to a wider market segment. In May 2011, we launched our mobile site, which means that it makes visitpensacola.com viewable on iPad, iPhones, Android phones, etc. And those statistics are just staggering. Of course, prior to that, their only choice was to go to our regular site via their mobile device. And we do know that approximately 87% of all travel planning actually happens on some sort of web device, a lot of it now being mobile phones with all the travel-ready apps that are available out there. So for us to have a 396% increase on an iPad access to our website tells us that we do need to start investing some marketing funds into our web advertising and really coming up with some really creative campaigns there. Facebook, as far as social media, continues to be the #2 referrer to our site. So that means people from Facebook or anywhere else that we carry a campaign on social media, Facebook really kind of floats up on top as the #2 referrer. As far as our public relations strategies, this is something where that those increased marketing funds really have given us a far reach. Our ad equivalency, and this is the way that we measure our public relations efforts, as a form of seeing what the return on editorial is. Compared to this time last year, we're up $3.2 million in ad equivalency, and this is everything from newspaper clippings to press visits that generate positive coverage for our area, which of course as public relations practitioners we view that as a really clear sign of success. To date, we have had 4 out-of-market Visit Florida media missions. That's where we align ourselves with the state's DMO being Visit Florida. They take about 4 partnering CVBs, and we have the opportunity to meet desk side with journalists in these major markets. I was able to go to Atlanta and Birmingham, meet with everyone from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to Southern Living, and really have some one-on-one time to sell them on the area and what it has to offer. And some of the unique stories, of course, that we have to share, Maritime Park and what that means for the revitalization of downtown, what we have as far as history. The state of Florida celebrates its 500th anniversary next year, and that's a huge opportunity for us to tell a story that hasn't been told before of what we offer to the history of the state. And of course, we are the first major historic lesson for the state, so we're really carrying on that story. National Flight Academy has been a tremendous story success for public relations. I just got back 2 weeks ago from Chicago, and everyone asked about the National Flight Academy and what we thought that meant, as far as giving us more awareness on a national level, which is very, very exciting. And then on Friday, I depart for New York City, where we will hold 2 media receptions, one of them being consumer travel, so everyone from Travel and Leisure to the New York Times, and then one of them being a blogger reception, where travel bloggers, mommy bloggers, of course that's a very hot new trend now, we will have the opportunity to meet with them and of course share the Pensacola story. as Scott alluded to, the Pensacola Celebrity Chefs event in New York City was extremely successful. We had the governor attend. We have, of course, the mayor attend, the site selectors, all of our representatives from the chamber. And what this did for us is from a public relations standpoint and as far as promoting tourism to Pensacola is that we were able to tie it into not only the great culinary offerings that we have, which of course everyone always loves to hear about great food, but also about the great personalities that we have in the area and how community driven we are. The chefs, the mayor, they all had opportunities to meet one-on-one with New York-based press and really tell the story on our behalf. And of course, we aligned ourselves very heavily to the Viva Florida 500 effort, which is the celebration of the 500 years of Florida. And we partnered with the University of West Florida in developing a culinary timeline that takes us back to 1559 and gives us an idea to discover, or an opportunity rather, to discover when grits were incorporated into our diets and when did we start using pecans. And, you know, as silly as those little things may seem, they really build this greater public relations story that has many, many legs, and one that we are, you know, starting up this year and really in 2013 is going to be our primary PR message as it pertains to historical tourism and culinary tourism. So that was a great opportunity. And of course, many of you saw the segment on Morning Joe on Monday morning prior to the event. The governor was there, Irv Miller with Jackson's was there, and Collier Merrill. So that was a great way to get Pensacola out there. We also in February hosted a special event in Cincinnati, which was called the Double Play Giveaway Contest, where we brought the beach to Cincinnati, of course, in the middle of their cold, cold winter. And they had the opportunity at a mall to sign up for a giveaway. And we just welcomed the winning family. There were approximately 700 entries, and the winning family joined us on Friday to go to opening weekend for the Wahoos. They had VIP treatment. They tossed out the first pitch on Saturday. WEAR did a great segment on them on Friday evening. So really those things that allow us to form some partnerships that are out of the box, but really help tell the Pensacola story again in a new way. And then Snowbird promotions were very successful for us this year. We launched a Snowbird savings card promotion. We also went to different areas throughout the Pensacola Bay area to let snowbirds know all that there is to do when they're down here and to encourage them to come downtown and to experience some of the areas that maybe may not be as natural to them. So those have been very, very successful, and we're just looking forward to continuing to tell that story for the next year to come. With that, unless there are any questions, I will turn it over to Megan Prozik, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Chamber. Yes, Doctor.
I want to commend your department for one thing that y'all did, and that's to take the tourism magazine, which is really, really nicely done, and put it online.
Oh, thank you.
Because that makes it so much easier. I mean, in the past, you physically had to go in and get one, and now anyone that wants one can go online and download it, and boom, it's there. So,
absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that.
For doing that.
Thank you.
I like the figure on the ad equivalency of the free media, I guess, that you guys have increased. In some ways, I think they're worth more than the advertising. Quite frankly, sometimes I'm going through a magazine, I'll skip over the ads. I think my wife looks at those, but for me, I'm much more interested in reading the articles. And I was aware we got several in there. I just didn't no idea that $4.7 million ad equivalency. It's huge for a community of our size. Good job.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Quick question. The breakdown on those 4 counties on the increase, the uptick, do you have that with you?
I do not have that with me, but I can certainly get it for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see how we compare
the
to
counties break out.
our sister counties. That would be what, Walton, Okaloosa,
and Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa, right.
Absolutely, we will get you that information.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, but
The answer to that is, Councilman Spencer, we did better than our neighbors on both sides.
thank you.
Okay, thank you again for having us here today. It's definitely an exciting time for the Chamber as we continue to focus on rededication of our organization and positioning ourselves as a world-class organization. About 6 months ago, we made the decision to rebrand the Chamber. Coming up tomorrow, actually, we will be launching our new brand with a new brand story, tagline, and logo. And we wanted to showcase the logo with you today. This is our new logo. Along with the new logo comes a new name. Our current name is Pensacola Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, and our new logo is, our new name is Greater Pensacola Chamber, to better encompass the entire area. As you may know, for economic development purposes, we not only work with obviously the city and county, but also with our neighboring county for additional opportunities. And this logo really represents, the team did a lot of research for this logo, really represents the entire area with the colors. At first glance, some people may see the Blue Angels, some may see a fish, some may see progression moving forward, and that is the entire idea of the logo, is that we are all these things. We represent Pensacola Bay Area. And in the next 2 months, we will be launching a new website. And we wanted to give you a sneak peek of that as well. This is just a couple of pages from the site. And that is it. If you have any questions, yes, sir.
May I suggest you send that great new, those graphics to Zimmerman Agency?
That has already taken
All right, so they
care
could,
of.
in their work, that they will collaborate at least. I think it's great. I cannot resist the opportunity whenever the chamber is in front of us in this sort of public venue to encourage all of us to think how we can help them now more than ever upgrade their facilities so that is more in line with this great new fresh identity and branding. The more and more progressive they get in their technology and web presence, and now with their graphics, the greater the separation is between that exciting, I guess, progress and the facilities that they reside in.
Thank you, Councilman. All I would suggest at this point is that Donnie McMahon, going into his year as chair, one of his top 3 priorities was to seriously explore our facilities issue. And so we've made some progress in that regard this year, but you're right. The mismatch between a progressive organization, results-oriented organization, and the facilities we are in, it's a stark contrast, to say the least. And I can tell you, I am committed that we're either going to significantly upgrade our current facilities, or we're going to get the heck out of there. So,
well, yes, and I think after Mr. Altier's presentation prior to you arriving to the CRA, it just reminded me what my debut was like, or my introduction, not my the introduction to Charleston, when I came to that city, touched their visitor information center as it was integrated with the chamber, and how well it dovetailed into the rich historic identity of Charleston. And I think there's some opportunities that are starting to come together after I've listened to that presentation and thinking about perhaps how someone may land in Pensacola and as a visitor and begin to get information in a new and exciting facility. Thank you.
Mr. Heiser, regarding the greater Pensacola area, I know I was excited when you first came here that possibly might partner with Baldwin County, Alabama, and certainly the counties to the east of us. I followed some of this in the press, and actually slightly encouraged that, there may be some change on the horizon. I understand that there's some suspicion on people from just to the east of us, and I would think that actually the partnership might work for them better than it would us, that maybe some of the opposition would come from this side of the Bay. But I certainly applaud your efforts in that regard and encourage you to keep going forward with that. and duplicate what you had done up in Kentucky there with your, 9 county cooperation. So anyway, I think you're doing a great job. One thing I wanted to say about marking your progress, it might be in inches and not feet or in yards so far, but as I tried to describe to people back during my first term on council, that I was starting to see some change coming back, and they said, well, we don't really see it. And I said, well, if you take just a big solid block of concrete and you just start trying to push on it, 2 or 3 people, it's not going to move. They wear out, but as you add more and more and more people on board, and when it first starts moving, it moves very slowly, and it takes a while to get that momentum going. So I'm certainly patient, and I'm happy with the progress so far.
I'm glad to hear that, Mr. President.
Okay. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple comments and then a question. I do want to say congratulations to Mr. Heiser and the team that you have put together at the Chamber. This is my 4th briefing on council, and I know there's other council members that have been here considerably longer, but the tone and the optimism and the expertise, not that we didn't have expertise before, but this presentation shows me how completely engaged the Chamber is in all areas of our community, and it's a shame that Mr. Dalton is not here because the military is by far, I think, the most important factor in our future with all of the things with health care and all of the things that Mr. Dalton mentioned. But I'm very proud of your efforts, and we are on the right track, and I know that the Chamber is a large part of how the private sector feels about our community when they are looking to do business here, bring their business here and also move here, or have a satellite office from somewhere else. And I just think y'all are doing a great job. And I know that your campaign, you have more dollars than you had anticipated, and like Councilman Spencer had said, to highlight the Chamber with some of the other efforts in town in a more prominent location is a great idea. And then my question I have for you, I know that Mayor Hayward is also continuing to look at this because it's such a wonderful opportunity to showcase our city. During the Promise Plan investigation process and trying to work on that program, the Florida scorecard was brought to my attention, and we've had that discussion. And I'm not putting you on the spot today, but I know the value of it from the perspective of a lot of people have said, I wish we could measure what Pensacola felt like the day before the Wahoos played, because our city's forever changed, and there's a lot of things that happen in our community that forever change us. So to be able to measure that, to not always say we have great potential, but actually be able to provide a measurement as leaders in our community, council needs to be able to say, this is what we're getting for our dollars that we invest. And I don't know if the members of council are aware of the website. It's a wonderful website, and it's just the floridascorecard.com. And it looks at all of the things that it takes to build a great community. It's the little, almost like a airplane you would be looking at, or a dashboard, and it talks about talent, supply chain and education, innovation and economic development, infrastructure, growth and leadership, the business climate and competitiveness, civic and governance systems, quality of life and quality of place. And what this does for us as a small community in Florida, it connects us with other communities. It gets us statewide attention as well as national and international attention when someone's looking at Florida, because we are such a popular state to look at, to come to do business in. So I'd love to see us get this up and running somehow. It's a very small investment. I'm going to say about $50,000 to get a website link up and running, but then you have access to all the data statewide and anything that they're doing. And I think it would be a wonderful way for us as a council to be able to measure our investment in the chamber. So I'd love to see that coming in the next.
Thank you, Ms. DeWeese. First of all, back to your compliment of our organization. We appreciate that very much, and all I can say is that if you like what you've seen so far, get used to it, because you're going to see more of it. We are making tremendous progress, and we're having a lot of fun at the same time, thanks to the support that we receive from the city and the county. To a more recent point, I would just tell you that Ron Jackson with Salt Marsh is the chair of our Benchmarking and Metrics Task Force, which is an outgrowth of Vision 2015. One of the things that we wanted to do for all of our investors, including the city of Pensacola, is to track our progress. And not just in total number of jobs and average wage per job and investment, but any number of other factors, including unemployment rate. And part of that whole process is benchmarking. And we appreciate Rick Harper's contribution to that effort. But I'm gonna ask Scott to pass along your suggestion to Ron and that task force to see if they track a whole set of issues and data. And so perhaps they would want to explore that and to add to the plate of things that they look at. So appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
Great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
anyone else from the committee? Ms. Myers?
Are you through with your presentation, or?
Absolutely. We're happy to take
Okay, you said
Q&A.
you wanted questions afterwards. Well, first I wanted to ask about the building stock database. When will is that going to be on your website, or?
Yes, ma'am. It's currently on our existing website under our Fast Tracks Building Sites and Database program. What we have right now, it's a process by which owners of property or brokers or representatives of property are going on there and they're uploading information about their site to us. Our next phase of that will actually be to develop a site where you'll be able to go there and actually search buildings and sites on your own. Right now we're using it as a collection point, but I'll be happy to forward a link to you directly if you'd like for us to.
Okay. Well, I do have some comments to make. I've gotten the feeling for years that when we talk about promoting Pensacola, we're basically talking about promoting one area of Pensacola. When in fact, if you look at uptown Pensacola, and I have met with the mayor's staff to actually develop a boundary that we would identify as uptown Pensacola. And it's basically the area between Bayou Boulevard or Brent Lane and Airport Boulevard. And that core area where Sacred Heart Hospital is and Cordova Mall and the airport and the Pensacola State College, that area there. When I hear Mr. Altair talk about the assets we have in this downtown area that we have not taken advantage of, I also have to think about other areas of Pensacola we have not taken advantage of in terms of promoting. When you look at uptown Pensacola, it is an economic engine that's unstoppable. It amazes me. If you look at what's been developed there in just the last 5 years, and right now, the old Kmart on Airport Boulevard, it's not going to sit empty. Before it even closed, there were 4 businesses that wanted to go in there. One of them is a business called Fresh Market. And the developer of the Commerce Park over by the airport wanted Fresh Market over there. Well, guess what? Fresh Market chose to be at the corner of Airport and 9th Avenue. Why? Because that's where the people are. If you think about this small, compact little area, we have, I think, around 15,000 students at Pensacola State College. We've got a hospital that employs 1,000 people. We have Cordova Mall that brings in all kinds of traffic, including the military, by the way. You go over there on the weekend, that's where they want to be, young men and women who are in the military, because we have an express bus route now that goes from NAS. And that was brought about on purpose because the military wanted an express bus route to take those young people to Cordova Mall. So we've got an airport over there. In just a very compact area, we have all of this really vibrant economic activity. And I just wonder why we don't promote that area. That's why I'm interested in this database here, because I'd really like to know where a lot of our building stock is. And I'm going to bet you anything that it's over there in that area. Anywhere from Fairfield to Olive Road and Davis Highway to 12th Avenue. So I just feel that the city is really losing out by not promoting that area, because when you come out of the airport, the first thing you see is basically uptown Pensacola. And we have a very concentrated population there. There are a lot of apartment complexes there, and great restaurants, hotels, motels, getting ready to have Hyatt Plaza. And I just wish that we could have some way of, developing a broader view of Pensacola and connecting uptown to downtown. There's some very scenic drives there along 12th Avenue under the tree tunnel. And I just think we're missing kind of missing the boat. And one reason we need to promote uptown is because of the neighborhoods around it. The property values would go up if people knew that they're buying in uptown Pensacola. I walk to church. It's 2 miles from my house to church. And I walk to church every Sunday it isn't raining. I can walk to Cordova Mall. I can walk any place I need to go to. I can, and we have 3 schools there: a high school, an elementary school, and a grammar and an elementary school, all in this compact area. And we're talking about trying to improve property values. Well, one way you improve property values is by letting people know the good things about your neighborhood. And one of the good things about the neighborhoods in close proximity to uptown is that you can walk or get to your job very quickly. And I have 2 people who've just moved into my neighborhood. One's a young internist. He moved into the neighborhood because he could be at Sacred Heart Hospital in minutes. I have a very young man, less than 30 years old, who owns a business at Cordova Mall. He bought into my neighborhood because he can get to his business in just 3 or 4 minutes, really. So I would like for the city council, the mayor's office, and the chamber to think more broadly in terms of how we promote our city. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that Mr. Heiser's approach has been much broader than even your thinking, is he really doesn't want to just focus on Pensacola itself or certain neighborhoods in Pensacola, but look at us regionally and bring us all under one umbrella. And I think most of the building sites, or acreage-wise, is over in Santa Rosa County. But bringing business to Santa Rosa County also happens to help Pensacola because we're the center of, the cultural life and retail life and restaurant life in Northwest Florida. So I think he hears exactly what you're saying. I'm not sure he wants to focus on one, what arguably is already a very successful neighborhood anyway. But to bring in jobs, manufacturing jobs, higher paying jobs, retail finds its own. The retail people probably know more than anybody in the room here exactly what types of neighborhoods support their business model. But anyway, anybody else on the committee? Okay. Mr. Heiser, do you have any wrap up here, sir?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just had one more introduction I wanted to make. He's sitting behind me, and I've been accused of keeping him under wraps, but another gentleman that I recruited who is actually my number two in my previous position, Brian McBroom, is Chief Operating Officer. And one of the things that I learned pretty quickly when I arrived here is that all the demands on my time and all the demands that are placed with respect to the issues that deserve my attention, I need somebody that I can trust, who is competent, understands how a successful chamber is to run, handling the day-to-day operations of our chamber. And I just want to thank Brian for his commitment and moving his family down here to Northwest Florida. We've made tremendous progress, and I can tell you we would not have made the progress we've made without without Brian's leadership, Chief Operating Officer. And again, we thank you for all your support.
Well, thank you. And that one of the things that I think is pretty remarkable looking at your new leadership staff there is just how remarkably young they are. And I find that to be very, very exciting. Okay, thank you. Dr. Pratt, I'm going to turn the next item over to you since you're the one that...
Put it on there?
I do want you to notice, though. I don't know where anybody falls on position on what Dr. Pratt is going to be discussing, but she did do it in a memo form, and it got on the agenda, and I just wanted to throw that up there as an example and encourage all of you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd actually meant to bring it up at our last Thursday council meeting following the last CMPA meeting, but it just slipped my mind, and I apologize for that. But the CMPA at its last meeting was presented a idea for a plaque to be installed possibly in two different places at the park near the stadium entrance and near the amphitheater, commemorating the people who worked to get us where we were. And one of the things I thought was sorely lacking in the plaque was recognition of the councils that have been shown the leadership and taken some pretty hard stances to get this project to where it is. And as you see, I attached two things. There's the plaque that was approved by the board, which includes the listing of the board members, and then my sort of made-up version. I will not take any credit, I don't want this to be the plaque because it's not that great looking, but it basically includes, in addition to the board members, the names of the council members who have served. I didn't break it out in terms of the multiple years and listing multiple people multiple times. I thought that was just cleaner, and that was the way the Board of Trustees was also listed. When I brought this up at the CMPA meeting, there was a little discussion, but ultimately Councilman Johnson suggested that maybe it should come to the council and see if the council would like to put those names on there. I apologize that I was out of town, and then I didn't want to bother Mr. Spears during opening week to follow up on the status of where it is right now, but I just thought that it was merited our discussion.
Is it appropriate to make a motion at this time, since it's a discussion item? I think it's important that council members be recognized. There's people in this community that will never be recognized for their contribution and the courage it took to ask this city to see itself differently. But we're here now, and it was a long journey, many years of discussion and evaluation, and I think it's very important that council members be recognized. So I'd like to make the motion that council member names be included on the plaque.
Second.
motion and second, Mr. Spencer.
Okay, I'll make no bones about it that I was the culprit that very vigorously campaigned to not have the council members' individual names on it. So as we sit here tonight, what I want everyone to understand is I felt I was trying to provide for what I thought was since I'm an expert in memorials now, a cleaner sort of format for a plaque. The plaque designer worked with us, agreed that at the time that putting all of these names on here was quite unique for a plaque, and I felt that we as council members could certainly have ourselves, should we want to do this, to have a separate plaque in the same format, and those individual council members' names could be on there. So I want to ask, is the one that was presented, Mr. President, the one that preceded Councilwoman Pratt's submittal, that is the one that recognizes councils by the terms, correct?
Right, there are two. There's one that just says Pensacola City Council and one that has all the names.
Right. So that was what I felt was appropriate and sort of kept that plaque with I guess, the information clearly depicted, still recognizing those councils by the terms and the years that any council sat and enacted in any way to provide for the development of the current maritime park. So what I had suggested in the committee, at the committee level, was that we have the opportunity to convene like we are today, and thus, I guess, Mr. Johnson, Councilman Johnson, made that formal recommendation, and if we want to recognize council members on a separate plaque with the ability to show what terms, I felt like whether it's appropriate, self-laudatory, whatever. I just offer for all of you again, that option, which I'm in favor of. I do not support the motion.
I was going to make some harsh comments about whoever thought that the council members should not be included. But in as much as it's one of my peers, I will restrain myself.
Thank you.
I'm
used to being beat up.
I think it would be ridiculous, and that characterization is very mild, for us not to include the council members that diligently deliberated back then when it wasn't popular, took all the heat, and had the wisdom to come up with the outstanding facility that we have over there today. I think it should be inclusive, and I like this attachment 3 with everybody's name on it listed, and how we could even imagine of doing anything otherwise is beyond my wildest dream. Thank you.
Thank you for that unharsh comment.
So you're really wedded to the council members being on the main plaque and not having their own plaque.
I've been in the back door too many times. Let's put it on the front door.
Okay. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I don't really have any harsh feelings or words toward my friend over there on the other side. I would like to just point out that his name is going to be on the plaque because he serves on the CMPA. Quite frankly, I think my name should be on the CMPA category because I've been to more meetings, I guarantee you, than I have an almost perfect attendance record over there. So, I mean, I want my name someplace on there for something, you know. So I'll settle for the city council side of it, but I don't really care about my name being on there. I do care about the city council members who made it possible. And I just, you know, a fluke happened to get elected, and so my name would be there too. But I do think it should be on the same plaque, and you'll just get mentioned twice. And so that's how I feel about it anyway.
Mr. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when I look at the list of names, it sounds more like a wall than a plaque. However, I think this is something that we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on. Let's just vote on it and move forward. Because we all have opinions about it, and it would be appropriate to name the council members that were involved, and that's all there is to it. And this does not require a 3 or 4 hour conversation or discussion. Let's just vote and move forward. As simple as that. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I don't have real strong feelings on it one way or the other. Mr. Messer and I were talking on a completely separate subject last week about those that spend like 20 plus years in the military. Oftentimes the guys that are the most deserving get no recognition whatsoever, and the commanding officer gets the big medal, you know, for something that he or she may not have even been engaged in. It's just part of life. So I would have never, if this had not come up, I wouldn't have thought one way or the other whether it was important. To me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I will say, though, that I like Mr. Spencer's idea better, is to have the separate plaque. And so when I vote against this today, it won't be because I'm opposed to the names being on there, because like I said, I don't have a strong, but if we are, I think a separate plaque would be more appropriate. Dr. Pratt.
I just want to throw a little kink in the works that I realized after I sent this. There are 2 names that I didn't include, which were the city managers that we traditionally have included, and Mr. Bonfield and Mr. Kobe, I would think could merit a line. I'm not going to quibble if this passes and they're not there. Yeah, that's fine. But I do think that especially watching Mr. Kobe and his hours of dedication on this project, that's traditionally what we've done, and I just left it off.
Okay.
I just have a quick question separate from this discussion on here, though, because we had loaned, I guess the city council, we had to approve that for Mr. Spears. But is there a reason that has to be on the plaque? I mean, he has been the executive director. It seems odd to point out that he's a loaned executive director into eternity on a plaque. Is there a reason for that maybe was discussed at the CMPA?
It was discussed, I think, tongue-in-cheek, and then it just didn't get taken off, I think.
It seems a bit inappropriate. He was the executive director, I mean, period.
Okay, now, let me just question the CMPA board members. Do we really have a dog in this fight? Isn't this the CMPA that gets to decide on that plaque?
Okay, and I'll answer that. The CMPA did vote for attachment 2, but there was the comment that it should come to the council whether we want it. And then the question of the separate plaque could be discussed as well. My point, I ended up voting against that motion, partially because if you do separate it out, it would make sense for them to no longer put the mayors and the city council on their plaque. You would just do the CMPA plaque, give them the CMPA logo, but I'm not an artist, and that was my reasoning when I presented it with the council names on the plaque, and I would think that we could have a amicable relationship with the board if we'd like to see it that way. That was the leaning I had.
Good, Brian.
I want to go on the record, especially for Councilwoman Myers, so that she knows that my proposition and plaque design, my involvement, did not even have my name on it once. There, it was simply listing the CMPA chairs. It listed the city council as a body by terms. It listed the benefactors. And so it wasn't that I stopped with a level of satisfaction that there was one name on it. My name was on there, one. I just want to make that clear.
I'm just playing with you.
Thank you. And wait, Councilman Gerald, this reminds me that in the AIA document that is provided by our, the American Institute of Architects, when we have guidebooks and when trying to establish a fee, and it clearly stipulates that if you ever have a client that is a committee, you must consider the difficulty and the multiple personalities involved, and that your design fee should be much higher, because designing by committee is an extremely difficult task, and that's what we're proving here tonight. We're sitting here trying to design a plaque by committee, and I'm hearing, let's add this on, let's add that on. The CMPA had discussions about paid staff. There was a lot of discussion about Ed Spears and that his role, he should be recognized. So I do feel like it's inappropriate for us to continue to add on more that was already discussed at the CMPA level. Thank you, but at this point, as I shared, design by committee is an almost impossible task, and I will not support this motion. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
You know, thank you, Mr. President, and the longer we do certain things, I begin to have facetious thoughts. And if it's as complex as we're trying to make it, why don't we put up the plaque and give each of us a magic marker and let you go down there and write your name on there if you want to. Otherwise, let's go ahead and take the vote and move forward. If you want your name on it, take your magic marker, write your name on, same as that design on the wall. And if you don't, you leave your name off. Because we can go around and around about this, and we're going to end up at the same place. Let's just do this and move on.
I called you Mr. Stevenson, but the Vice President has something to say.
Y'all making good points, but I think it's totally unreasonable to even consider putting anything on that particular monument down there, or the stadium, for the very people who approved this particular project, for the very people who appointed the CMPA. We approved and put the CMPA folks on there. And now you're going to tell me you are going to list them as being responsible for the document? It is totally unreal, and I can't imagine you sitting here having this discussion about not putting the city council folks on this. It's just totally unreal, and I don't know where you folks coming from in this regard.
Call the question.
Okay.
Question.
I'm going to go to Mr. Spencer and then Ms. Stupison.
Councilman Townsend, I think you and I hope we're not as far apart as right now the audience may perceive. I simply was saying that as a council body, that we certainly can and should address it as a plaque. And that plaque, Councilman Townsend, should we want to discuss recognizing all of the council members, it can be 5 times bigger than the other plaque. I was never suggesting that your name, as well as others that have fought very valiantly for this project, not be in some way commemorate, that you disappear from your role in defending this project at all. I want to make it perfectly clear. I had recommended another plaque with the same trademark, the same recognition in the bronze as a sister plaque, and it could, I felt like it could very well be formally presented in a very dignified way. So I apologize if my suggestion in any way has recommended that I diminish your role or the recognition of what you've done in this project. I truly apologize if that's how it's been interpreted.
Mr. Gusan.
Yes, having been at both the subcommittee and the CMPA meetings where this plaque was discussed, I never heard the word loaned being officially added to the plaque, so I do believe that that is absolutely something that should be removed because Mr. Spears has served as executive director, as his title. And they went through a lot of energy to make certain that they didn't have any titles in front of other people, such as Reverend, Doctor, whatever their nomenclature would be. So to add a qualifying adjective like that, I think is totally unnecessary. The second thing is that while you are questioning whether the CMPA or you have the right to do it, their directions, I believe, when they passed it, were let's pass it up to the city council, and if they would like to have their names added to it, they may make that decision. We don't want to put ourselves in the position of telling them they can or they can't. There were some individuals who had very strong reservations about it because of certain individuals that they felt had not supported the park, that they should not get recognition, and my suggestion to them was that then that could be their punishment, is that their name will forever be linked with it. So by positive or negative association, the individuals who are responsible were those members who sat on city council, who sat on CMPA, or who were the professional staff permanently attached to the project. And I would suggest that their names belong on a single plaque as a single recognition of what this city united has been able to do over the many years that it took. And that celebrates how many different opinions, different factions, and different energies have come together to create the positive result that we have.
Well,
so I would encourage you to pass the number 3.
I'm just sitting here wondering, what would you do with my name? I've been on both sides of this issue. Would you put my name up there with a little delete mark beside it?
Half your name. Just saying.
All right. Okay. Yes, sir. I think we're starting to get goofy here now.
No, I'll make it very, very rapidly. It doesn't matter to me either way. I just wanted to defend Councilman Spencer. What his proposal was that everybody still got the recognition. And I think somewhere in the conversation that was lost. I'm going to support what's on the table. Makes sense. Smaller, all together, as Mrs. Dubuisson said. But I just wanted to defend Mr. Spencer. He wasn't eliminating anybody on any council. He was simply talking about 2 plaques rather than 1. Makes sense to me. I appreciate the fact that you were going to include everybody, and I'm going to go with what's on the table because it's small and compact, and as Ms. Dubuisson says, it makes us all look like we work together.
Okay.
And Sam, we'll just put your letters just half
inch smaller.
Half
Okay,
inch
okay,
smaller.
that's fine. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, let's do a show of hands. Okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? Okay, 6-2. Okay. Okay.
On the
And-
losing side of another memorial.
Does that mean you want us to take your guys' names off?
You certainly, if you want, if you.
Lowercase, maybe, lowercase letters?
Lowercase, take the name off, lowercase, put it off to the side, the bottom,
Upside down.
upside, yeah, it's.
Do it, Marty.
Yeah, what are we gonna do with, what are we gonna do with Marty? Yeah, okay.
My bronze can rub
Do it the
off.
Russian way.
I thought about that too, about Marty.
Mr. Gerald's, the request to rename Woodland Heights Park the William E. McNeely Senior Park. It's your item.
That was a request made by Mr. Walter Wallace, who's the president of the Woodland Heights Neighborhood Association. And I've gone over the material that they submitted about the track record of Reverend McNeely. And personally, I have no problem with that request.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the request on behalf of the Woodland Heights Neighborhood Association. And in addition to that, take the motion and then I'll comment. But the motion would be to approve the request from the Woodland Heights Neighborhood Association to rename Woodland Heights Park after Reverend William McNeely.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the audience? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Date and time for strategic, this one's actually got a couple of authors to it. You and Ms. DeWeese, I think, or you and Ms. Myers. No?
You good to go first?
Good debate.
Strategic planning. Do you have comments about that?
Well, I don't have any comments. I'm open to suggestions.
I think
When
at
are we
this-
going to have it?
At this point, we're talking about the date, time, location, the schedule. Let's see, Easter's out of the way.
Could I make a recommendation that it be sometime in June? I think we've only got one meeting in June. Ms. DeWeese is frowning, so.
I won't, I'll
Okay.
be gone most of the
Okay, okay. July, yeah.
What about May, the end of May?
Does that work for you?
The end of May would work better.
Okay, just pick out a date.
Without a calendar.
Elaine send an email to everyone.
Okay, we'll talk it over with Elaine, and then she'll forward an email to each of us, letting us know
Okay.
what day in May, but it will hopefully be the last week and a half to the last, anywhere on the end of May, on the downside of May.
Would either the clerk or Mr. Reynolds make sure? I think Ms. Major is watching this up from her office, but in case she's not, or stepped out for this, just let her know. Send that email out, please. Okay, thank you.
One more thing, Mr. President. There were some other things. Had we settled on whether or not we would use a facilitator or exactly how that
I would
process will
encourage us
work?
not, I would encourage us not to. I've been through 2 facilitators in the strategic planning process. Each one of them were considered experts in their field. They took 2 completely different approaches. The second one was moderately better than the first, but I was kind of disappointed in how much difficulty we had of still putting it all together. I would just like to be able to have our strategic plan that came out of that, and then council just being able to come and somebody's got to chair the meeting. And, if you don't mind, I'd point you or Ms. Myers to chair the meeting for it. But what I would hope for is that we didn't have a whole lot of Robert's rules involved in it. It was just, it opened up for discussion, maybe a little bit of stepping on each other during the discussion as long as it didn't get out of control. But a very collaborative, collegial atmosphere.
And I would agree with that assessment of how things should flow, but I do believe that it will be important that each of us review the documents that were prepared so that we can make changes and eliminate those items that we've accomplished and sort of move forward. But to have a clear, and I'd like to get with Mr. Reynolds to have it clear that the objectives of the meeting and the anticipated outcome is clearly identified as we begin, so that we will know whether or not we've accomplished our goal over a reasonable period of time. And in addition to that, to set forth in any documents that we create in the future of this type, that we have a period of time that we come back, take a look at it, and evaluate its effectiveness and whether or not we've done the things that we talked about. But I look forward to having such a meeting so that we can clear up some misinterpretations or misunderstandings as they may relate to the new charter.
One of the things I'd like for us to decide here today, though, I know we've got a date that will get input on, but what hours would you be looking at? Would you be looking at an all-day session, let's say 8 to 4, eat lunch in, have carry-out brought to us, or?
That would work for me.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't take a whole day. Okay. If you study your documents before coming to the meeting, it should go quickly and smoothly.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just was thinking that when you mentioned the facilitator, I know that there's been some minor progress towards acquiring the council staff, and I was just wondering if we could if we do better than previously, what do you think a feasible time frame would be? Because it would be great if we could have that staff person on board at that time, but I just don't have a sense.
Yes, essentially what we've done at this point is I believe, Cher, is it 6? Yeah, we've identified 6 individuals that are currently in the process of taking an assessment, if you will, and I hope to have next meeting, have the 6 here next meeting, the results of those assessments.
You've been keeping up with what's approved unanimously.
As soon as physically possible.
I know you want this person yesterday, but I just didn't know if it's even feasible to consider that we would have narrowed it down to the final candidate by that point. We might not have brought them on, but it would be valuable to even bring them here if they haven't moved here yet.
Yes, ma'am, and some of those there's actually at least one internal candidate, so I think that, there's some opportunities there, one way or the other, to at least invite them if the council has made its choice by that point, so.
Right. But I just think that would be a nice addition to the meeting to have that person there. Anyway.
Okay, we got that squared away?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the next is the consent agenda. And I think it's item 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and item 12, not 12, I'm sorry, item 13, and item 1.
Move the approval.
Move approval. Do we need a motion for that? Do
I
get a
move
second?
the approval, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. We've got information items here. Unless you need to discuss them, we'll just read them, correct? Item 15. Okay. The February 2012 monthly report on disparity study is the information item. Functional consolidation of building and zoning enforcement with code enforcement. You had a information item on that. I guess we're going to have this public hearing on this come Thursday for number 18. Number 19 is the aquatic program at I think Hunter's Pool, I believe. And number 20 is the drop, and you've had some correspondence regarding that. And I don't know whether you want to discuss that now, but that's an issue that probably is going to be discussed maybe during the negotiations.
What we have with this is an information item this time around. What we want to do then is to bring it back then for discussion at our next committee of the whole meeting to make sure everybody's had an opportunity to look at it, and then we'll also have a presentation at that time.
Okay, so that'll be okay? Yes.
I did want to point out that we all received a letter from the firefighters union to make sure that staff also has that as well, if they're preparing to bring it back, that their concerns.
I think all of you did receive that letter from the firefighters and police. Yes, sir.
Mr. Townsend, just a couple of quick comments. I had a whole speech prepared, a couple about 3 pages, 4 or 5, I can't remember now. Luckily, I don't have to pull it out. But just real quick, I know it's a discussion item, and I will say it's being handled at this point appropriately. I do want to point out a couple of issues from a personal standpoint on this thing because I've been involved in the Mayor's Pension Advisory Committee. And I am the chairman of trustees for the Pensacola Police Pension Plan. You know, we've been working, I sat on the advisory committee and went back to the collective bargaining session, and again, I'm not going to get too far into that for the same reasons that you're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it today. But, I caution council about the, Councilman Spencer's comments about doing certain things by committee that create issues for you. And, you know, when you try to lead by committee, you also have those types of issues. And when this information got out to the rank and file at the department, you have no idea what it did to morale, but it shot it through the floor. And I think you need to take that into consideration when you move forward on stuff like this and gets on the agenda. You know, it makes it difficult for me, and sitting on the Mayor's Pension Advisory Committee, and Mr. Penzone will tell you, we've had some very good conversations. We know things need to be done. We were working toward doing that. I had a significant number of officers on board with some of the directions we were going. But, you know, when something like this pops up on the agenda, you know, it really makes my job much more difficult. Plus, I consume a whole weekend writing a 4-page presentation that I didn't get to make. So, anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak to this out there? There was no objection. If you would like to, your presentation that you had prepared, if you get that to the council members prior to us having our meeting with next meeting and listen to staff, they will have that already.
I appreciate that, Mr. Townsend, but as you said earlier, some of my comments are kind of harsh, and I'll hold my powder to another day, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding this issue? Okay, well, you'll bring it. Okay. Any other council communication? Yes, Councilwoman
Thank you,
Louise.
Mr. Vice President. And I actually have something quite exciting that I want to share with council and possibly make a motion, if appropriate, at this time. Back in January, Dr. Wu and I and Mr. Dave Flaherty received an email from Millie DeSorbo, and we're in a public setting, so we can finally talk in public. I'm not sure of Councilman Wu's efforts and discussions with Ms. DeSorbo, but I want to read you the original email, if you'll bear with me real quick, because it says what I would try to say and make a mess of. So that she said, I'm sure you're aware of what Mike has contributed to the City Council, being Mike DeSorbo, former councilman in District 3, in many ways, but the one that I'm concerned about is his participation and lifelong support for the Recreation Department of Pensacola, and particularly Exchange Park. Mike began playing softball over 50 years ago, first at Bill Gregory Park, progressing to Exchange Park in the late 60s, where he continued to support and play at Exchange Park. He's presently playing on a traveling team, Ed's Aluminum Buildings, for 75-year-old and older team, who has a tremendous team record of trophies and awards accumulated over the years. Mike will be 75 years old, July 31st this year, 2012. I'd like to put the wheel in motion, if at all possible, to rename Exchange Park Mike DeSorbo Park in honor of his 50 years of dedicated support and service for the city of Pensacola and for Exchange Park. It wasn't all 50 years on council, but he was, I think, one of the longest serving councilmen in our history. So she was asking about that process, and she kind of got caught. This process went through the Parks and Recreation Board. I have a binder that's fully documenting a lot of the efforts and the work that Mr. DeSorbo has done for Exchange Park, and that Exchange Park has been to the benefit of. So I do support renaming Exchange Park. I also want to thank the staff time that's been given to me over the last few weeks trying to verify, because Exchange Club does not seem to exist anymore in Pensacola. It was the Downtown Pensacola Exchange Club. And I do know Mr. Connolly had mentioned he saw that the last president had just recently passed away. So I'm working to try to find out through the Florida Exchange Club if they have an opinion or are simply indifferent, or if there's a local contact. So I know the naming of it originally was based on the concession stand that Exchange Club was running. It wasn't a monetary investment by the Exchange Club in the park infrastructure or improvements. So that was the gist of how it was named. So I'd like to make a motion that we rename Exchange Park Mike DeSorbo Park, and have that be subject to further information from the Florida Exchange Club.
Second.
Properly moved and second. Questions, comments? Yes.
I guess I would say that I think I support it, but I guess usually I like to see something. I just didn't know if we could put it on an agenda for next time instead of doing it tonight. Was there a pressing reason?
I'm not certain if through all of this from January till now that it is still a surprise, but that's why it wasn't on an agenda, or I didn't bring it up on a Thursday night because Mr. DeSorbo watches council religiously on Thursday nights. So I don't. That would be the only reasoning. I mean, I'm happy to do that if there's a great concern about that. We know his history with his.
Or maybe even
service.
before Thursday, if you could forward the information that you've received so that we can all make informed decisions on Thursday.
Because I've brought it up in a meeting, I guess I can share those emails. This one that I just read.
Could, or something.
How does that work, Mr. Mann? I just read it in its entirety. Can I forward that one to council?
Yes, ma'am. As long as you don't discuss it, you can forward the materials.
Through Ms. Major, then.
Councilwoman Myers?
Well, I'm really not prepared to vote in favor of it tonight because if you're changing the name of a park in a neighborhood, I think that the public should be notified in advance and have some input into renaming a park that has been a big part of a neighborhood for a long time. So that's my position. I mean, as far as I'm concerned personally, I think that's a wonderful gesture and very thoughtful. But I think that we've learned that when we make some modifications to things that are important in neighborhoods, that people need to know in advance so they can have some say in the matter. So I won't be supporting it for that reason.
That sounds well and good, but I don't think that's one of the requirements.
Well, I'm sure it isn't.
Huh? Is it one of the requirements that we poll the neighborhood when we name something after?
No. I don't think so,
It's
but I
just your
think it's
desire
good
that you'd
practice.
like to see that, but that isn't a requirement. Okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Aye. All right, raise your hand. Opposers? Okay, it passed. Anything else? New business?
I just have one easy thing. HMC's Robot Lab is having an open house this Thursday, I think 4 o'clock till 7, and it's open to anyone. They're going to be showing off their stuff, and it's an invitation to you and anyone you know. It's just a free event, and you know people who always say, what do they do in there? All the people at Anytime Fitness who always are spying there or something. Just let them know, and they can come.
Sorry, I just want to revisit something. I am a huge fan of Mike DeSorbo. He is one very enthusiastic supporter of definitely not only softball, baseball, but our sports programs. So I want to make it clear that I heard from my fellow Councilwoman DeWeese recently about how important process is. So,
I followed our process.
Right.
It's just simply bring it to council.
Okay, so
you remember the discussion that we went probably 4 different iterations of our new policy discussion, and this was all caught up in that and waiting.
So if
basically. So there's nothing. It's simply
not
bring it.
jumping ahead of anything, then you'll get my full support. It just happened rather quickly. Thank you very much. And new business?
Yes.
I just want to float this idea and ask for fellow council members to consider how I'm asking you to brainstorm with me, candidly. We all receive unsolicited emails, and part of our role as an elected official is to remain completely open and accessible, and we can choose to react to messages communication, whatever form that it comes. And I'm asking you to consider, are there ways that we can manage the information that comes to us and qualify it in any way that is, again, a uniform application of that. For instance, I know that we receive blitz emails from a gentleman named Peter Evers. And we can choose, again, whether to block senders. I know some people have made that choice. I hope that I don't have to do that. But certain council members have said, I'm going to put these people on my block senders list. I don't want to have to go to that extreme, but I would like to know if these individuals, is there a way that we could have our, any sort of qualification? Where do they live? Do they live in New Zealand? Councilman DeWeese, you're smiling, so you'll brainstorm with me, but I would appreciate, like the News Journal has gone through, like many media sources have at least worked out some means of providing some level of legitimacy, it's part of our electronic age, and I know that I don't want to intimidate the public or block that, but I do feel like some of these emails I get, I would appreciate having some qualification about who they are. But
thank you.
I just went ahead and lobbed out that one for my fellow council members.
Thanks, William. My personal opinion is that I don't think this council is in a position to, as a policy, to say that we're going to block out certain individuals that we don't want. I think that would be hard. Let me finish. So hard to get accomplished without creating some real big issues. I think maybe council have heard what you're asking, and if there's a manner in which something like this that can be done, I would suggest that each individual council person would speak to the council, our lawyer, say, well, I don't want to receive some emails from an individual because of whatever. I just think we're, in my opinion, raising some issues that we don't want to try to face in terms of a person who want to send us an email and that we got a council policy that say, no, we don't want it as a council. That's my personal opinion. And even though that might not be what Councilman Brian is suggesting, the perception will go a long way, in my opinion. As well, we're kind of blocking freedom of expression, freedom of speech, that kind of thing. So I'd be reluctant to venture down that road until we could get a clear clarification legally as to whether that's appropriate or not. And that's my little bit on it, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just like to welcome Councilman Spencer to life as a public servant. We must always listen, even if we don't agree. And if you're getting an email that you feel threatened by, certainly let the appropriate people know. But this is the freest country in the world, and I treasure input from even people I agree with. Obviously, that's nice in my inbox, but the ones that disagree, I learn from. And I don't think anyone should ever have to qualify where they're from. I mean, anyone can come to our open forum, as we saw during Occupy, and they have a right to their sacred 4 minutes in front of us, and as many times as they want to come down. So I would run as fast as I could from any suggestion of a policy and a motion being made to have people qualify who they are and what they ultimately want. They have a right to say, without threatening us, anything they want about our city, our decisions, our processes, our failure of processes, whatever it may be. So Just be patient.
Yeah. Councilman Gerald.
Couple of things. One, I would like to encourage each of you to review an email from Mr. Reverend John Powell, and he's requesting some assistance in some renovations and repairs that he needs at the Belmont Youth Center. That's one thing. And sometimes you can ask for something on a normal basis and then you say something else. Well, and I have to share this with you folks as my colleagues here on council, and that my parents taught me that when you had company, you treat them nice. The chamber came down here, the Bay Area Chamber, and I'm sure you all noticed the diversity in it. And they're keeping on the same pattern as the chamber before. And I remember an email when Ms. Mars once mentioned barf bags. And as I heard us praise, so to speak, what they were doing as if we accept the absence of, and I don't know if they were saying a technology campus or technology park, but it is a technology vacant lot. Not a tenant there. Nothing's happening. And when you come before me in that sense, with an all-white team, with an all-white jury, and then you get to the point where you say, well, where is the diversity? Now, we all talk a good game about diversity and a lot of other things, but I just didn't see it among that group, and I doubt if any of you saw it either. Not today. But that strengthens my resolve, that strengthens my relief, my belief that a Gulf Coast African American Chamber is indeed needed, period. Because I don't see any help, I didn't even hear a mention of anything that would have, touched upon the needs that we are trying to meet within our community. So I had to restrain myself and be nice, as my parents taught me, to not just explode as they went on and on about the plan. And I can understand what the plan is, but if the plan is not inclusive, then we're not going anywhere with it. We're looking at what we were looking at in the 40s and 50s. And I can, recall, and it's just a continuation, a perpetuation of foolishness and nonsense. And if anybody in the African American community is interested in developing and growing businesses, it will be up to them. And as I've indicated 100 times, I have no interest in being the chairman or the CEO of the Gulf Coast Chamber. But I believe we've come to a point where I want to take the entire group and throw them all under the bus and start out with a new group, with a new plan, because it's a continuation of the same old game. So rebranding, whatever you name it, it's the same foolishness that is exclusive. And if we as a council, under the statute, continue to funnel money into them, and we're not seeing businesses grow, develop within our neighborhoods and within our communities, as in uptown, downtown, crosstown, around town, it's simply not happening. Not if it's left up to that group. And we see it, the writing's on the wall. So therefore, a Gulf Coast African American Chamber is needed, it needs to be funded, and it needs to have the opportunity to grow and develop those businesses within our community so that we can make money. This is not a racial thing, don't misunderstand it. This is about money, this is business. So don't try to cross the lines. I know I mentioned diversity, et cetera, but this is about business, growing business and money. It's not a personal issue for me. It's about business. And until we get a handle on it, and let them know, this guy comes to town, he hires his buddies from here, there, and every place else, who know, I don't know what they know about Florida, and it's probably less than what they know about the city of Pensacola. And yet they're here telling us what we're going to do, and yeah, we're doing, it sounds great in conversation, but it is not inclusive, it's not meeting the needs of all of the citizens. And until we get a handle on that, it's going to be business as usual. And that's all I have to say. Let's break
I think there was not in order who wants to speak to that other issue that we were talking, and I think you want to so do you want to do it now?
Yeah, but before
Okay.
before Dottie nails me, no, I want to make something perfectly clear. First of all, Councilman Townsend, all of our computers have the to block sender option. You can, anyone that writes us, we can make that conscientious choice and block them for a month in perpetuity, whatever. That's not what at all my challenge that I guess I offered to all of you that I shared with you. So I want to make that clear. I have not blocked one sender and do not intend to block a sender. That was not what I was saying. They should have access to me, and I need to, as a public official, accept that the fact that they will be giving me anyone, whether it's 1 in the morning, there's no time limit when they should press send. I simply was asking you all to consider, I guess, the quandary of what the World Wide Web provides, and that is, unlike the days when someone placed a call and you could politely ask their identity and who are you, and could I have an intelligent conversation, at least give me the courtesy of telling me where you live or where you work, what connects us. That the web has now provided an immunity and a level of anonymity that I think is unfortunate. And I'm simply saying that if I continue to get opinions from individuals that choose not to in any way give me an opportunity to understand their context, that's my dilemma. But I meet with people that disagree with me often. I do not try to provide or create a bubble of comfort. And as you all know, recently I certainly was outside my sphere of comfort. So you know what, I'll use this. I encourage anyone that's writing me and all council members to be more forthcoming about who they are. It certainly, they gain the respect from me by doing so. That's it.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Let me go. We want to limit this conversation if we possibly can.
Well,
Yes.
I would like
Go
to
ahead.
weigh in on the conversation.
Go ahead. Councilman Myers.
Okay. First of all, I think that if a council person wants to block a certain person's emails, you can do that. However, I would not do it. I believe that to do so would deny that person the right to petition their government. Now, as to a person who uses a fictitious name or any other type of identity, that is a protected act under the United States Constitution. In fact, there have been some Supreme Court and federal case rulings on that. A person does not have to reveal their identity when addressing their grievances to the government or making statements to the government. And there are some valid reasons for that. And our country's history is rooted in the use of anonymity to express political thought. Our founding fathers, the writers, the framers of the Constitution, used other names other than their own. I mean, if you consider the political climate they were in, a lot of our forefathers used other names other than their real names because of fear of retribution. So we have a long patriotic history of people who address political issues using other names, other than their real names. Obviously, there's a person who sends emails to us who does not want us to have personal information about him, and that's his prerogative. And it can be frustrating because, I mean, I've attempted to reach out to this person too, and I don't do that anymore because I know that person does not want to share any information with me other than what that person has sent me in an email. So that's my position. People have a constitutional right to anonymity, and when you serve in a political office, that's just something that goes with the territory.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just
On the
brief-
same subject?
On the same subject, but just briefly, and I know you guys are talking about me. I'm the one that admitted blocking certain people, but I don't block anyone that I don't know. But on the other hand, I have a mailing address, I have a cell phone, and a phone in my residence. And they also have access to me when I'm here. So if anybody's out there sending things and don't want to know who, if you have the fortitude to come forward, then bring it. Don't throw rocks and hide your hand. If you got something to say to me or government, come on down. That's why we're here. We were in the open. Thank you.
Ms. Dubus,
Yes, this is a subject which is very dear to my heart, and I personally feel very strongly about it. You are elected representatives of the entire community. Each of you has a specific district from which voters have put you in this position, but you also serve the entire community. And to open yourselves to public office means you open yourself to public input. So you have the choice of reading or not reading any mail, of having any conversation. But I wish to call to your attention that not only do you already have an app in place that gleans certain things, some members of this community cannot reach staff members because their email address may come from the wrong carrier. Now, if you want to talk about where you really need to be looking at it, you need to look at why a citizen can send an email to a staff member, and that staff member does not get it because your app has already gleaned it off as spam, when in fact it is a significant citizen situation. I've spoken with MIS and Mr. Reynolds about it, and I understand that they're trying to address it. But you folks are getting only a percentage of the citizens who are trying to be in touch with the city. I do believe in anonymity for those who do not care to stand up and have the retaliation of certain council people telling them they need to be on medication, or telling them that they speak too much, or telling them that they're not a voter, or they're not a property owner, or they're not a whatever you decide to eliminate their opinion on. But there are people from all over the country who are interested in Pensacola, who try to contact you and send information, and sometimes total strangers who have never even been to Pensacola are being listened to because their email address goes through your filter, and mine, a local citizen, registered voter who has voted regularly in this community, gets pulled out. So if you really want to look at being open to good, healthy input, I think you need to look at that. By the way, my email automatically carries my street address, my phone number, and auxiliary contact information, and has a verification that says I am the person who sent that. But I am regularly accused of having sent information to this city that other people have attached initials or names or things that look like mine. I tell you what I think, and I think you all know that I'm not going to hide behind some anonymous name. But there are other citizens who do not feel as comfortable and who do feel intimidated when council members put them down either verbally or in written form. So I would really encourage you to look at this and recognize that this is the basis of democracy. I appreciate what Ms. Myers has said. We are founded by as a country by individuals who chose to criticize their government, who chose to stand up and say we need to make a change, and that is the only way we'll survive as a country if we continuously ask ourselves what we're doing. Thank you.
One final thing, do you have any information on the executive assistant for the council? The status of that?
Yes, I hope to have something before the council as soon as possible, hopefully even by the next time we meet. We have 6 people that we have asked to complete essentially surveys, personality surveys, and general surveys to determine what kind of individuals they are and how they would operate in an environment like this. As soon as we get the results from that, we'll get it to council and then eagerly anticipate any decisions that you'll make based upon that information.
Anything else to come before the